Can I solve Pretty Little Liars Season 3 before the reveal? It has been months since my last Pretty Little Liars video, and I am so pumped to be back. And is this a safe space? Like, can I be honest with you guys? The fact that I've had to wait 6 months, roughly, to watch Pretty Little Liars Season 3 has driven me nuts. I cannot wait to get back into this show. PLL stands, rise up. I was told in a comment in one of my old videos that no one calls it PLL, it's PLL. But, you know, I'm a bit of a trendsetter. If you are jumping into my series with just this video, you may want to go back and watch the first 2 parts that cover seasons 1 and seasons 2. And of course, spoiler alerts for like everything that happens in season 1, season 2, and season 3. The end of season 2, we found out that someone else had been killed. And it was also revealed that like, the person that was revealed as A in the season finale had someone that they were working for. So it really looks like our mystery is just beginning. We are going to try to figure out who this new A is before the show reveals it. If you're new to this channel, this is how it works. This is not a recap of the show Pretty Little Liars. This is me watching it for the very first time and trying to solve the mystery before the show reveals it. So we'll jump into season 3 of Pretty Little Liars, and after every few episodes that I watch, I will jump in here and I will break down all the suspects, theories, and clues that I have for who I think could be A. That way, when we get to the end of the video, we can look back and we can see exactly how close or how far I was from getting it right. That's enough yapping from me. We have waited almost half of a year for Pretty Little Liars Season 3, so let's just jump right into it.
Then at 8, Pretty Little Liars is all new. They've unmasked A.
You're still safe, are you?
I got a text. Is it starting again?
There's a lot you don't know.
Do something like this.
Woo! Feels good to be back in Rosewood, baby! I was not lying when I said that I have really missed this show. I just watched Season 3, Episode 1, and oh boy, it's as if we haven't even missed a beat. Just as a refresher, we found out a lot of information in the finale of Season 2. We found out that Mona, I drew a little devil with her name, because Mona is A. We also found out that Maya, who is Emily's girlfriend, is dead. So now it's just like the original mystery, which was the death of Allison. It's like we're starting all over again. There is a new death of a teenage girl in Rosewood. Mona, who turned out to be A, is in a psych hospital getting treatment. And in the finale of season 2, we saw a scene where Mona was talking to someone off camera and said, "I did everything you told me to." Which means that even though Mona was A, it turns out that there was some other A who's actually been in charge the whole time. And let's not forget all of the unanswered questions we have from season 1 and season 2. My favorite being, who was hidden in Jason's house last season? This is Jason, that is Allison's older brother. We also found out that Jason and Spencer are half siblings. Someone was hiding in Jason's house, and we have no idea who it was. Also, who killed Ian? I'm gonna be honest with you. If you watched my Bridgerton video, you'll know that I drew one of the characters that I forgot to print out, and I used the back of Ian's picture to do that. So I don't have Ian's picture on the wall anymore. But he's dead, so we really don't need it if you think about it. But anyway, who killed Ian? Was it Mona? Did Mona kill Ian? Did Mona also kill Maya? Because Maya's dead and Mona was A. We don't even know if Mona as A is who killed Allison. We don't know who killed Allison. That's like the main mystery. We have no idea what went down between Ian and Melissa and Garrett and Jenna. Melissa, who is Spencer's older sister, and Garrett, who is a cop. Garrett and Jenna were like dating, and then they were with Melissa and her boyfriend slash husband slash baby daddy slash dead guy were all in Allison's room together the night that Allison died. Mona, in the season 2 finale, asks Spencer, who's one of the 4 main girls, to join the A team. When you say A team, does that mean that there's a bunch of people who are A? So we still have all of those questions that we need answers to. And then we have the new mystery, which is the mystery that we are trying to solve. Because remember, we're not trying to solve the mystery of who killed Allison. We're not trying to solve the mystery of who killed Maya. We are trying to solve the mystery of who is A. And we thought that when Mona was revealed as A, that was the end of the mystery. But it turns out that there is someone who's actually in charge, and that is who we need to find out. Season 3, episode 1 starts flashing forward 5 months after the night that Maya is dead. And our 4 main characters, Arya, Hannah, Spencer, and Emily, they each did very different things during the summer. Arya was in a photography class. Spencer was taking college classes. Emily was in a different country, like building homes. And Hannah was just chilling, I guess. Well, it's the first episode of season 3. We flash forward 5 months. The girls are all hanging out and we're finally getting some information. Turns out the entire summer, the girls keep getting these fake A texts that are just people like messing with them and joking around after the big, incident happened at the end of season 2. Like one of them is a message that says, "Show me your boobs, -A." We also find out that Garrett, who was getting the rap for Allison's death, is going to be going on trial soon. Now, I don't know if you remember, but as a recap, Garrett and Jenna were working together on some evil stuff, trying to cover up stuff. Jenna actually ends up framing Garrett for the death of Allison. So, now Garrett is in jail. The issue is, I thought that when Mona was revealed as A, that would have mean, like, she was the number 1 suspect of who killed Allison. But I guess not. Like, I thought A killed Allison and Mona turned out to be A. So I thought that would be the end of that. But it turns out, I guess, the cops and everyone in the world of Pretty Little Liars thinks that whoever killed Allison is very different from who A is, which it might be. Well, I think it's just been so long that I assumed that whoever A was also the person that killed Allison. Oh well, we'll get more into that later. For now, we're seeing our 4 main characters, the best friends, hanging out, drinking, having themselves a little party. And this is very similar. It's almost an identical parallel to the very first episode of season 1, where we saw the 5 girls, because Allison was still alive, doing this exact same thing. They're hanging out, they're having a little something to drink. It's just them partying together. And that was, of course, the night that Allison went missing. So, what is going to happen tonight? Sure enough, Arya and Hannah wake up and they see that the door is wide open. Spencer and Emily are nowhere to be found. And dude, I was so stressed. I was like, not again. Are we about to lose one of the 4 girls? But then Spencer runs down the stairs. And I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly like what happened last time. Because in season 1, when the girls woke up, they couldn't find Spencer or Allison. Spencer ran in and was like, I can't find Allison. And now she's doing the same thing. Spencer runs down the stairs and she's like, I can't find Emily. And it's just like, Spencer, why are you always so suspicious? But don't worry, no one is dead this time. The girls end up finding Emily, and Emily is standing over Allison's grave, which has been dug up. And the grave is empty, and Allison's body is gone. Where my Allison's still alive and is actually a girlie's at. Now, the theory that Allison has actually been alive this whole time, that theory does have some more legs, because her body's not in the grave. Anyway, Emily is so drunk because she's been drinking a lot since the death of her girlfriend, Maya. I know I was blocking Maya when I pointed at her, so let me do it again. Maya. But because she's so drunk, she has no clue how she ended up at the graveyard. But she is standing over it. She gets enough consciousness to call her friends. They come running to save her. And this is not the girls' first rodeo. They get there and they immediately jump into action because they know that if they are caught at Allison's grave, where it has been dug up and stolen, they will be suspect number 1 once again. So while they are trying to clean up any trace of evidence that they were there in the graveyard that night, they're also trying to piece together the pieces of why Emily got there in the first place. Turns out Emily got a phone call from Spencer. while everyone was sleeping. Now, Emily doesn't remember the call or who was talking to her, but whatever that conversation was is the reason that Emily left the house. And so Spencer's like, oh my God, if my phone was the number that called her, then that means that they were in the room with us and they used my phone. So now they're freaking out because they're like, who was in the house with us while we were sleeping? I would be remiss to not point out that it makes Spencer look insanely suspicious as well. Like, we go through this all the time. Why is it always Spencer? So anyway, they want to make sure that nobody can find out that they were at Allison's grave that night. So they plant some evidence to make it look like they were at Spencer's family's lake house that entire night, which means that they wouldn't even be in town. It wouldn't even be possible for them to be suspects. And the plan works. No one thinks that they were there the night that Allison's body was stolen. But now the girls have a big mystery on their hands. Who would want to steal Allison's body? The exact quote from the episode is, "The only person who benefits from Allison's body being gone is her killer." And since the girls and everyone else in the town believe that Allison's killer is actually Garrett, the cop, they're like, well, he must have done this, but he's in jail. So who helped him? Was it his ex-girlfriend Jenna? Probably not. I mean, she is the one who turned him into the cops and is framing him. But honestly, we don't even know if she's framing him or not. It could be Garrett. Then there is Melissa, Spencer's sister, but I think she's in like Philadelphia or something, so she's not anywhere near Rosewood. So already it is getting pretty complicated. I'm buckling in, and I hope you guys are too. That same night that Allison's body is stolen from her grave, the girls run into Lucas, the yearbook guy. Arya and Hannah see him out in town in the middle of the night. He looks very suspicious, and might I add, he also looks very rough. He does not look good. Now, I've always really liked Lucas, but I don't really know what his deal is. It's kind of implied in the season 2 finale that Lucas was helping Mona, and I guess he's a part of the A-team, but I don't know that for sure. What I do know is that the girls say that he has been dark ever since that night. Like, he's not talking to anyone, he's acting weird and suspicious. So we need to remember to keep him in mind at all times. So now let's talk about kind of like the main part of this episode, or at least it's the part I'm the most interested in, and that is the part that Garrett the cop is on trial for Allison's murder. I really thought that when A turned out to be Mona, that everyone would just immediately suspect her. Like, especially our 4 main girls. But even the 4 main girls believe the media and the cops' opinion that it was Garrett. Now, we know as an audience that Garrett was set up by Jenna. And then the cops also have the theory that Garrett also killed Maya because Maya's family moved into Allison's family old home. And so they think maybe Maya found something in the house that would prove that Garrett killed Allison. So he killed her to keep that from getting out. That theory doesn't make any sense to me personally, and Spencer also doesn't seem to buy it. Now, the girls do seem to buy that Garrett killed Allison, however, but they know that Mona was A. And we know that A was stalking and harassing Allison before Allison died. So why do they not suspect Mona? This whole thing, it leads up to Garrett calling Spencer from jail. And so she goes and visits him. And he tells her that he is completely innocent. He did not kill Allison and he did not kill Maya. But he thinks he knows who killed Allison. And Garrett is talking to Spencer and he's like, there is so much that you don't know. This isn't over. You are all in danger. And then, as he is being taken away by the guards, he yells out, I know who took the body. This is very interesting, and Spencer does seem to believe Garrett at least a little bit. She knows that something is not adding up. Something is wrong. Add on the fact that Arya sees A, or at least someone dressed as A, which is black hoodie, black gloves. Spencer knows that someone was watching her in the woods, and Emily was being watched by someone in a car, and that means A is in full-on action mode again. Now, the ending of this episode is very interesting. We get a ton of information from the girls. Turns out Spencer has spent the entire summer going to the old motel thing that Mona had her A lair set up in, and Spencer has been digitally recreating it exactly on her computer because Spencer saw the A cave that night that Mona was revealed. Well, if Mona got busted that night, why is Spencer having to digitally recreate the A cave? Well, it's because when the girls went back the next day to go and look at the A cave, someone had cleaned the entire thing out. All of Allison's diaries, all of the black hoodies and costumes that A used, all of it gone. And since Mona was like under arrest at that point, it couldn't have been Mona who cleaned out the A cave, which means Mona was not acting alone. At this point, Emily starts having flashbacks to the night that she can't remember. That is the night that they all ended up at Allison's grave. And she gets these flashes and she remembers being in a car with someone. And it's the exact same car that is sitting and watching Emily. And that is when Emily gets a text that says, "I bet you remember me." All of this leads to the final moment of the episode when someone busts the windows in Spencer's car and there is just thousands of copies of a picture of the 4 girls standing over Allison's grave that has been dug up and her body stolen. This is a message from A. A is going to frame them for stealing Allison's body. And that is when we get our first official A text of the season, which says, "Mona played with dolls, I play with body parts. Game on, bitches. Dash A." We officially have a new A, which means that we officially have a new mystery to solve. I know that this is so much information, but it's like, dude, this show has not pumped the brakes. Like, season 3 starts with them just hitting the gas pedal. So, of course, the big question is, who is this new A? And I think new is a relative term because it seems like this A has been in charge the entire time. Because Spencer brings up the same kind of questions that we had about Mona being A. Like, Mona was with Hannah when Emily got a massage from A. And also, there's no way that Mona could have moved Ian's dead body out of that church bell tower by herself. So who are our suspects for this new A? Well, this is going to suck, but I think that everyone that we have suspected or had on the wall from seasons 1 and 2 are still up for grabs. Jenna, we know that she's involved in some capacity. Melissa, we know that she's involved. She was on that videotape showing her in Allison's bedroom the night that Allison died. I'm still not convinced that Melissa didn't help her husband Ian set up her sister Spencer when Ian was trying to kill her in the season 1 finale. You remember that? You remember how she conveniently left her phone at that church? So Spencer had to go back to the church, and then Ian was waiting for her at the church, and she was like, "What are you doing here? I'm here to get Melissa's phone. She left it." And he's like, "I know she did. And I think it's because she did it on purpose." Trust that girl. I don't trust her at all. Then we've got Lucas, the yearbook guy. He is definitely involved in some capacity. It feels like they even kind of said he's definitely working with Mona. They said that. I mean, they definitely alluded to it in the season 2 finale. And now he's just like out on the town in the middle of the night looking like the Crow from the movie The Crow. And then there's Mona herself. And like, here's a pretty solid theory about Mona. We know that Mona turned out to be A, but the reason that we're even going on this wild A goose chase again is because at the end of season 2, after Mona is revealed, she is talking to someone and she says, "I did everything you told me to." And so we take that as, oh, she is talking to the real A, the big A. But then in this episode, something very interesting happens with Mona. Hannah has actually been visiting Mona in the mental hospital all summer long. And Mona has been completely unresponsive. She doesn't talk, she doesn't acknowledge anyone's existence, but Hannah keeps going and visiting Mona because I think she just has like a guilt thing. Like, I think she feels like she was such a bad friend that she caused Mona to snap and become A. So she keeps going back because all of the doctors, including, where is this guy? Ren, do you remember Ren? Ren was dating Spencer's sister Melissa, but then he started kissing up on Spencer, and so that broke up, and then that issue didn't end up working out. And so, but Ren is a doctor. Well, now he works at the psych hospital where Mona is being kept. And he thinks that Hannah visiting Mona is definitely helping her. And we even get like this really creepy scene of Mona like spying on Hannah talking to Ren. It's very like Silence of the Lambs coded. Anyway, one of these times that Hannah visits Mona, we see from the audience's perspective, Mona has a vision of Allison and she sees Allison in the room with them. So now I'm thinking, what if the person that Mona was saying, I did everything you told me to, was actually just a vision of Allison? And it wasn't real. She was just talking to a hallucination. And her doing all of these acts as A was because this hallucination of Allison, the girl that tormented her and bullied her and ruined her life, she's having these visions of her and she's doing everything that this hallucination tells her to do. And we know that Mona is a genius. A is one of the best supervillains I've ever seen. What if Mona is continuing all of these A antics from the luxury of her hospital room? Another theory that I have relates to Ren. He was such a small character, I'm really surprised he's even still around, so that leads me to want to look into him further. And now he's just conveniently a doctor at the hospital where Mona is being kept. Because remember, it's not like a real hospital, it's not an ER hospital, it is a mental hospital. And the last time we saw him at work, it was at the ER, so like, what's up with that? Plus, we get a very interesting line from him in this episode. He says, "Sense is something rarely mined from mental illness. Trust me, I've spent a lifetime trying." What does that even mean? What mental illness has he spent a lifetime trying to make sense out of? Here's my theory. I think that Ren might actually be Mona's older brother. And maybe he's been helping her. Maybe he's the one in charge. I think it's a fun theory because he was close with Melissa. He's close with Spencer. He's gotten really close to Hannah while she's been visiting. Oh yeah, and then we have Ezra. He's still around. Him and Arya are still dating. And it does seem like it's going to be like that for a while. Arya's mom seemed to have come around to the idea. And Arya's dad doesn't even show up in this episode. So I don't know if maybe he's just not in the show anymore. Maybe he had some other roles or something. Conflict of schedule or something like that. And I say that because it seems like her parents have officially divorced this time after the whole arc of the first two seasons where like, are they going to get back together? And then they do get back together. But then season 3, episode 1, they're like, nope, they're divorced. They decided to divorce. But yeah, Caleb is still around. Him and Hannah are still dating. I don't suspect him. I'm a big fan of this guy. I don't think he has anything to do with A at all. And then there's Spencer, who we've already spoken about in this episode being like, she's always a little bit suspicious. Like, you know, her phone is the one that called Emily. She wasn't in the room the night that Emily disappeared or the night that Allison disappeared. And we have had a pretty long-standing theory throughout the last 2 videos where we think maybe Spencer has a mental disorder that causes her to have alters. Now, this show, because it's like the 2010s or whatever, probably wasn't as like respectful when it comes to those kind of like very real mental disorders, right? So like the actual term for it is alters. This show would probably use something like multiple personalities, which I have learned is a harmful term, so we will try our best not to use it, even though I'm pretty sure this show would use it, if that makes sense. The theory was that maybe Spencer experienced some sort of trauma, and that trauma caused her as a defense mechanism to create an alter, kind of a different person that she becomes in stressful or intense situations. And maybe that alter could actually be a replica of Allison. So she like becomes Allison sometimes, which would mean that Spencer could be doing all of this A stuff and not even realizing it. And, you know, it's a kind of another possibility now because it's like, well, maybe Spencer did use her own phone to call Emily. And then she kidnapped Emily, took her to the graveyard, and then went back to the house and then didn't even realize that it happened. Again, I'm not a professional. I don't know anything about it. It's just a silly theory for a TV show that's a teen drama. Please do not take this as any sort of fact. And then there is our like most out there theory, which is the idea that Allison is not dead at all. She has been alive the entire time, and she has been the one pulling the puppet strings. And I personally think that now that Allison's body has been stolen from her grave, it makes it even more of a possibility that that theory could be the case. Because we find out in the episode that the judge in charge of the Garrett killing Allison trial had ordered for Allison's body to be exhumed so that it can be re-examined for evidence. And then, right after that judge makes the order, someone goes and steals the body. Everyone seems to think that Garrett hired someone to do it to help protect himself and help him win his case. But what if it was actually Allison doing this? What if the body that they found that was Allison's wasn't actually Allison's body? The thought process with that was, it was a year before Allison's body was found, which means that it was in the elements for a whole year. So maybe if, A had used like a body that was resembling of Allison, they could get away with it because it would be really hard to identify the body. And then at the time, I guess they thought maybe Allison's death could have been an accident, so they didn't look super into it. And so now that the body was going to be exhumed for the trial and looked at very closely, Allison was like, I got to get that fake body out of there before people realize it's fake. I think that's a good theory. It does have its flaws, Allison's body did have an autopsy done, which means that they probably would have known it wasn't Allison's body. But, who knows? But I do need to lock in my guess for who I think A is for episode 1 of season 3. And I'm feeling like my strongest theory so far is that Mona has just been taking orders from a hallucination of Allison and that she's still running things from inside the psych hospital. She's a genius, she's an evil genius. So I think that she is capable of continuing the operation while being supervised. But I do want to incorporate another theory into that theory, and that is the theory that Ren is like Mona's older brother or something. So I'm going to be locking in Mona and Ren for who I think A is, season 3, episode 1. I'm so excited.
Their nightmare isn't over.
She could have an entire outfield playing for her.
Now they must learn from one enemy
Now you want me to go back there with cupcakes?
how to defeat another.
You're getting them again, aren't you?
This video is not sponsored. However, if you're a fan of these videos and you want to help support me in any way, there are ways to do that. Like, if you remember this moment from my first ever Pretty Little Liars video,
there's preying on someone's downfall, and then there's making sure that downfall happens each and every moment. A is the Kobe Bryant of villainy, dog. There are no off days. A is pulling the Michael Jordan flu game every single episode.
well, I do have some new merch celebrating that moment. It's available in my shop, link down below. Also, you can subscribe to my newsletter, which will actually be launching with the release of this video. We've got a lot of fun stuff that we're doing over there, so if you want to join, the newsletter is of course free to join, but if you do want to help support my Patreon, it's like $2 a month, and we're trying to do fun stuff over there all the time. You get a little bit early releases to the videos, and then I do like polls asking what my next Can I Solve video should be. You know, stuff like that. Okay, sorry, back to solving.
I felt safer when Mona wasn't talking.
She's locked up,
I know all about Mona being A. It's the tip of the iceberg.
but she's still playing the game.
She was faking.
Okay, so I remember now why I waited so long to make this video. I just watched episodes 2, 3, and 4, and this show makes me crazy. I'm watching the episodes, I'm looking for all the clues, and then I get confused, and then I don't even know what I'm looking for anymore. The show really has like a whole different vibe now too. Like it's really switched from like this like teen drama filled plot lines to like, it's like a serial killer's on the loose. That text message that we got all the way back in episode 1 of this season when A says, Mona played with dolls, I play with body parts. Like that really set the tone. Like A's not just like messing with their romance lives and like school drama. Like we barely even see the high school so far in this season. You know, like A has always been a supervillain in our eyes, but this A, the A that's in charge, this is like serial killer. You know what I mean? Like, speaking of serial killer, at one point, A sends Emily a necklace, and the necklace says dead girls can't smile, and it's got human teeth on it. We assume that these human teeth are from Allison's body, which was stolen from the graveyard. We don't know for sure though, because before the girls can take the necklace with the teeth to the cops, it accidentally gets flushed down the toilet. But that's not all that A has taken from Allison's grave. Arya receives an earring. Now this earring was placed in Allison's grave at her funeral, and Arya is the one that put it in there. It was like a little memento because we get a flashback that goes all the way back to when Arya and Allison discovered and walked up on Arya's dad having an affair. And so they go to his office where he worked at the college, and they searched his office for any clues that he was still seeing that girl. Her name is Meredith, by the way. And while they're searching the office, Allison finds those earrings. Arya's like, oh my God, these must be Meredith's. And she ended up putting the earrings in Allison's grave as like a memento. And that doesn't seem super important, but it was a whole thing where they trashed her dad's office to make it look like Meredith did it, so that way he would definitely not see her anymore. And so Arya felt super guilty when these memories resurfaced, and so Arya ended up telling her dad that it was her that did that. So her dad makes Arya apologize to Meredith. And during this, Arya tries to give her back her earring, to which Meredith says, "That's not my earring." So, whose earring is it? I don't know, but since A is involved, I imagine it has something to do with something. At the end of episode 2, we get one of those A end credit scenes. It's like at the very end of the episode, they'll do one little scene. It's usually very quick, and it's from A's point of view. And this time, A was at the store buying a bunch of black hoodies and gloves. And the cashier's like ringing him up. And the cashier goes, "Oh, you buying all these for a team?" The Avengers Initiative. Can't spell Avengers without A. Anyway, this leads me to believe that the show is telling us, hey, Mona is not the only A. There are a bunch of people involved in the A team. And this is something that we've talked about in the last 2 videos over the last 2 seasons. The idea that maybe A is actually made up of all of the different characters who had a bone to pick with Allison, because Allison tormented and harassed so many people. People like Noel Khan and Jenna and Mona and Lucas and Melissa and Ian and literally anyone on this wall. And that combined with this end credit scene where A is buying a bunch of black hoodies and gloves leads me to believe that there are probably a lot of people on this board who have something to do with A. Which doesn't really tell us anything new, but that's just how this show works, dude. We just gotta keep grinding. A lot of weird stuff happens in this batch of episodes. Like Lucas is edgy Lucas now. He's all dirty and grimy. He looks like he hasn't slept in weeks, dog. Hannah corners him in a classroom to ask him some questions, and he lights his disciplinary referral on fire, throws it in the trash can. Almost starts a fire at the school because he's edgy Lucas. And he definitely knows that Hannah and the girls are being messed with by A again, which means that I think proves he is involved in some capacity. Like we see Lucas visiting Mona in the mental hospital, and when Hannah and Caleb catch him, Lucas says, "It's better for a lot of people if Mona stays crazy." Which is just an insane thing to say if you're innocent. So like the girls definitely have edgy Lucas on their list of who could be this new A, but that's not the only person that they're trying to solve. Also trying to figure out who was in the Black Swan costume at the homecoming dance at the end of season 2. If you don't remember, right before Mona gets exposed as A, they're all at the dance, and we see someone dressed as a Black Swan talking to Jenna and Caleb. And it all goes down right about the same time that A is revealed to be Mona. So it really makes it seem like those 3 are a part of the A team, and maybe that Black Swan is the leader. So in this 3-episode batch, that is the big mystery that the girls are trying to solve, and they do solve it. So basically, they solve this mystery. Long story short, Spencer gets in trouble by her mom, who is an attorney, for going to visit Garrett. And she's like, "You better not go see Garrett again. That guy killed one of your best friends." And Spencer's like, "Whatever, Mom. You don't know what I got going on." Then, out of nowhere, Spencer's mom does a complete 180, and now she's actually defending Garrett in his case. So she is his lawyer now, and Spencer finds that out and immediately is like, what is going on? And so Spencer's trying to figure out why her mom took the case. Her mom keeps deflecting. She's pretty sure her sister Melissa is the reason that her mom took this case. And we also find out, because Melissa comes back from being out of town, that Melissa is no longer pregnant. And at first I was like, that is very sad that Melissa lost her baby. But then it turns out, and I mean, this is still sad, but Melissa was faking being pregnant for a long time. Like, she wasn't faking entirely. She was pregnant with Ian's baby, but then after she discovered Ian's body, his dead body that time in the woods, like in a cabin in the woods, she lost it shortly after that, but then she pretended to keep being pregnant for like months. And the girls find this information out because they sneak into Melissa's apartment and find the Black Swan costume. So Spencer confronts Melissa, and then Spencer's mom actually shows up in the middle of this confrontation, and she gets involved too. And Melissa gives us a lot of information. She says that the reason that she was faking being pregnant was because she was afraid, and she was sick of being in the papers constantly. You know, her husband was accused of killing Allison, and then he died, and then so she was just like, it's better if nobody knows what's going on with me. And you know what? I think that's fair enough. I think that's valid. And then Spencer asks her why she was dressed as the Black Swan at the homecoming dance and why she was talking to Jenna. Melissa explains that she received a package with the costume in it and a note that said that she needed to go to the dance and distract Jenna, or else they were going to reveal her secret about faking being pregnant. So she was terrified that if it came out that she was faking being pregnant for all this time, that people would immediately suspect her to having something to do with Allison's murder, which they already did, so she didn't want to bring that back up again. So she did what the note told her. She dressed up as the Black Swan, she went to the dance, and she talked to Jenna. Again, fair enough. Then, while all of this confrontation is happening, Spencer confronts her mom about why she is suddenly taking Garrett's case. So Spencer's mom explains that a while back, her and their dad hired a private investigator to follow Melissa around right after Allison disappeared because they weren't so sure Melissa was innocent. And one of the witnesses that were going to be called to the stand in Garrett's trial was going to be that private investigator. So she took the case to keep that from getting out, because if that went out, then people would assume that Melissa killed Allison. And again, I think that's fair. So yeah, since we've talked about Melissa and we've talked about Edgy Lucas, let's talk about Jenna. Jenna is a character that we have been suspicious of since the very beginning of the show. She has the most likely reason to want to kill Allison because Allison is the one who blinded her. Which reminds me, Jenna can see now. We have suspected that due to some stuff that happens in like the season 2 finale and around then. But we officially know for sure. If you don't remember, Jenna had like this experimental surgery that could potentially let her see again. And she told everybody it didn't work. Turns out it did work. And Emily, who's been having flashbacks to the night that she was kidnapped and ended up at Allison's grave, and she remembers who was driving the car that she was in that night, and it was Jenna. So that leads all of the girls to start trailing Jenna. They follow her around, and then they see her driving a car. The ultimate proof that she is not actually blind. They confront her, and she tells them what happened. She says that Emily was in her car that night, but it was because she had Emily was just standing drunk in the middle of the road, and Jenna almost hit her with her car, and then she was like, oh God, I can't just leave her here. And so she got Emily in the car with her, and then she was like, I'm gonna take you home. But then before she could get home, Emily just runs out of the car, which once again, fair enough. And during this scene, it really does seem like Jenna is truly scared of someone. And I think the person that Jenna is very scared of is the person who is who is the one in charge. My theory is that the person who is in charge of this whole thing isn't actually doing most of the dirty work. I think that they are blackmailing or hiring people who had a vendetta against Allison to do these A tasks, including Mona. And I think that Jenna is one of these people who was working with the big A, but got in too deep and wanted out. And that is why she was pretending to be blind for so long. Maybe Jenna wasn't even blackmailed into helping A at first. Maybe Jenna just really wanted to get back at Allison. But after Allison dies and other people start dying and she's in too deep, she wants out. The same could be said for Lucas, who was harassed by Allison when she was still alive. Maybe he's in the same boat. He wanted to help A, and then it got too real. And so he wanted out, but now, he's being blackmailed or something. And maybe that's why he's so edgy now, because he's trying to get out. And I mean, that even leads us to Mona, right? Like, what if she's just been taking orders this whole time, and everything that has happened has been the result of this puppet master? That's the one big bad that we are looking for. Maybe that big A even killed Allison, maybe even killed Maya, maybe even killed Ian. They're the big bad guy. Everyone else up here are just minions. And speaking of Mona, during this batch of episodes, we see Mona a lot. In fact, she actually steals a guest pass and some tweezers from Hannah while Hannah is visiting her. And Mona actually speaks for the first time during these episodes as well, when she looks at Hannah and goes, "You're getting them again, aren't you? The texts," which tells us that Mona is still in the loop, in the know of what is going on with A. And we actually see her talking more and more throughout these episodes due to her medicine starting to work. I think that might be a cover, but what do I know? One last thing about Mona from these episodes, at one point, it seems like she purposely gets her visitation rights taken away. She has this big meltdown, and I think that could be because Mona is also trying to get away from A. Maybe Mona is also terrified of A. And so she's trying to get her visitation taken away so that A can't come visit her. But then in the end scene, the little end credit scene from A's point of view for that episode, we see A hacking the system and getting Mona her visitation rights back. So who is this big A? We have to lock in somebody, and everyone is up for grabs, even the 4 main girls. Because now that we know that this mastermind isn't necessarily the person in the black hoodie that we see all the time, they wouldn't have to be around. Does that make sense? When we've seen A show up at the same time that we see all 4 girls together, then that could have just been one of their minions doing the task for them. I'm not saying it's one of them. I'm just saying they no longer have an alibi. So let's just keep looking through suspects. There's always Ezra. I love accusing him of stuff. And he has a very suspicious line in episode 2 when he's talking to Emily. He's helping tutor her or whatever. And he goes, I just want you to know I'm so sorry about Maya. I just want you to know that. I'm so sorry. And it's it just seems like he's being a nice guy. But what if he's genuinely apologizing because he killed Maya? Then there's Ren, who we actually partially locked in for the last section. I still like that theory that maybe he's Mona's older brother. And we find out also in this batch of episodes that his dad spent most of his life in a psych hospital as well. So maybe it's a hereditary thing. His dad had it, he has it, and Mona has it. And it's just this issue that causes them to lash out. Then there's Jason. Remember, this is Allison's brother, Spencer's half-brother. He is officially back in town, which I'm very glad. He's one of my favorite characters. He has put up a $50,000 reward for any information that could lead to the returning of Allison's body. Well, when he does this, Spencer goes and talks to him and tells him that he needs to take that down. She's like, all you're gonna get is a bunch of people that are lying and trying to get your money. And he's like, I know when people are lying. Fast forward to the end of episode 4, when Jason and Spencer run into each other again, and Jason tells her that he has gotten over 200 calls. And he says, everyone's been accused, from Mrs. Welsh to Obama to even you. And he goes, and they're all lies. You were right. So Spencer has a moment with him, she walks away, then Jason pulls out his phone, calls someone, and says, yeah, I'll meet you in the park. Then we see him writing a check for $50,000. I'm assuming that he just lied to Spencer, and he was testing Spencer to see if she would admit to it. My theory is that A sent him the picture of the 4 girls at Allison's grave. And so now A is going to be receiving the $50,000, and Jason is suspicious of Spencer. Because remember when he was I know when people are lying to me, and then when Spencer and him are talking, after Spencer walks away, he's looking at her I knew she was lying to me. You know what? I can't even blame A for that. That's just a good plan. If you're the person who stole the body, and then someone's I'll give you $50,000 if you can tell me who stole the body, and then you can show them a picture of someone else at the body, and then you get paid $50,000, and then you still have the body. You know how many Pretty Little Liars videos I could make if I had just $50,000? I would do Pretty Little Liars part 5, 6, and 7 in the set where they filmed this show. Speaking of A, Hannah and Caleb end up breaking up because Caleb knows Hannah's hiding something from him. What she is hiding is the fact that A is back, and she just doesn't want him to worry. So she's about to come clean to Caleb and tell him about everything, but then Hannah receives a text from A. It's a picture of a woman in a car crash, and the text says, "I am everywhere." Turns out the lady in the car crash is Caleb's mom, and so Hannah understands this is a threat, so she does not tell Caleb. Caleb is upset because she still isn't coming clean, so Caleb breaks up with her. Then, Detective Wilden. Do you remember that guy? We called him Detective Wilden. Well, he's back, and I don't really think he's a suspect. I just think he's a cop. Which, And then, of course, like we said, the fact that the 4 girls no longer have an alibi due to the nature of this new A means that it could be one of the 4 of them. The only one that I've ever heavily suspected and accused is Spencer due to the mental health reason. And I think that's kind of my best theory right now. Because if we're going based off of the idea that all of the people that we have kind of suspected of being A, being the ones in the black hoodie, are just henchmen or employees, then that takes away a lot of suspects for who could be the mastermind. And I'm afraid the 4 girls are kind of the main pillars of who that suspect could be. So yeah, I think that is what I'm going to lock in for this section of episodes. I'm going to lock in that I think Spencer is A.
A will push them to their limits.
That was close. Yeah, way too close.
And then A will pull them apart.
Are you breaking up with me?
This show is so sick, dude. It's really leaning into this creepy, mysterious vibe. At points, it's just really intense. And there's just so much information being thrown around, even though I still have no idea anything that's happening. But I just watched episodes 5, 6, and 7. And dude, we're meeting new characters. We're getting really creepy moments that happen in this psych hospital. It's got everything that you could want. The show is it's almost leaning prestige supernatural thriller. And A definitely gets up to a lot of chaos in these episodes, starting with A has done something to Garrett's mom. Now remember, Garrett is in jail. A has done something to Garrett's mom. Garrett's mom's in the hospital. That's pretty convenient because now that Garrett's mom is in the hospital, Garrett gets to leave jail one night to go and visit her. Also conveniently, that same exact night that he will be leaving the hospital to visit his mom, Jenna is throwing a giant party. And whenever there's a big party or a big celebration, you just know that A is going to be in the background doing some crazy work. But this time, the girls are on top of it. They go to the hospital where Garrett's mom is being held to try to look out for if A shows up. And although no one came to see Garrett while Garrett was in the hospital with his mom, something crazy does happen. He leaves a note tucked into his mom's medical bracelet that says, April Rose has the proof. Who is April Rose? I don't know. And that is the same question that the girls are asking. I lied when I said I don't know. We actually do get the answer to who or what April Rose is in this batch of episodes. You see, Spencer and her half-brother Jason are working together to try to figure this out. And Jason is actually the one that figures out what April Rose is. It's an antique store. They visit the antique store and they find Allison's anklet. It's this gold bracelet looking thing that Allison wore on her ankle. So they take that and they give it to the police. Turns out the police have been looking for this anklet for 2 years now. And it has traces of blood of 2 different people. One of the blood traces belongs to Allison, which means that she was wearing it on the night that she was murdered. But the second traces of blood is presumed to be the blood of the murderer. So they test the blood to Garrett's blood and find out it's not a match, which means that Garrett is probably innocent. Now, one thing that this tells us is that Garrett is somehow involved with Allison's death. Just because how else would he know that that anklet that Allison was wearing when she died was in that antique store? And how come A didn't already know about the anklet and where it was? Why was Garrett having to leave a note for, we assume A, to go and find the anklet that would prove Garrett's innocence? But it's not over there because Detective Wilden is after Hannah, and it appears that A is actually framing Hannah for Allison's death. It is strongly suspected by the girls that Hannah's blood is going to be the blood that is found on that gold anklet. And we think this because A planted a Ouija board in Hannah's house, and when Hannah goes and touches the Ouija board, it pricks her finger and it makes her bleed. And then there's a note, and the note says, "See how easy it is to get your blood?" We also find out that that Ouija piece, like the piece that moves around the Ouija board, it was in Allison's grave. That was the memento that Hannah put in Allison's grave at her funeral. So now this is another thing that was stolen from the inside of Allison's grave. Now, why was this Ouija piece in Allison's grave? Buckle up, because it's about to get creepy. A few nights before Allison's body was found, remember she was missing for like a year, Mona and Hannah, who were just absolute besties at the time, and they were using a Ouija board, and they were just like asking it questions about Allison's death. And at one point, the board tells them that Allison is still alive. Then lightning flashes, Hannah looks on her back porch, sees Allison for just a split second, boom, then she's gone. It is very likely, since we know that Mona was that probably a big trick, probably just messing with Hannah. But there's still the chance. Well, after this, Hannah and Aria decide that they need to sneak into the mental hospital to visit Mona at night so that they can talk to her unsupervised. And this is where this show, I mean, it's honestly sick. It's so dope. Very terrifying. Mona is like, they talk to Mona in her room. Mona escapes, and they end up finding her in the abandoned children's ward of this mental hospital. And it's from like the 1930s. And Mona starts talking to them in code. And she's talking in a code where the first letter of every word makes a new word. And so we get several messages using this code from Mona. The first one being Maya knew. What did Maya know? We don't know. The next secret message is a website, www.massugar.com. And then the third message is the words "not safe." Now the girls do end up figuring out this puzzle. I do want to point out that I figured it out before they told me about it. So, I mean, you can't really you're just gonna have to take my word for it because I can't prove that I knew it before they told them, you know? But I did. Anyway, the girls figure out these codes and they type in the website, and it is a terrifying website, which we don't really get a lot of these days. The only terrifying website I can really think of is like Twitter. But the website just has a picture of Maya, who is Emily's dead girlfriend, and it says, "What's the magic word?" And it has like where you put in a password. Now, we don't know the password. If I had to guess, maybe the password was one of the messages that Mona was saying in code, like Maya knew or "not safe." But I don't know. The girls don't know the password either. But all I know is I think A made a website about a girl that they killed. Like, we knew that A was a genius, and we knew that A was a supervillain, and we knew that A was capable of murdering. But did we know that A could code? What can't this genius do? But also what's interesting is A did not tell the girls about the website. Mona told the girls about the website. Now, I know Mona is A, but you know what I'm saying. So, this leads me to believe that this website has been made for a while, and that A has just been waiting for the perfect moment to send it to the girls. And I mean, I guess maybe now this moment is now when Mona tells them about it, but I don't know. This feels like something that Mona did outside of A. Like, this was Mona maybe even trying to help the girls. Because I think that Mona might be terrified of A. Guys, it's getting really complicated. I hope you're not just jumping into this series with this video. Please. All right, but other stuff is going on. Edgy Lucas is back. We see him banging on a photo studio, and he's just yelling, "Give me back my stuff." We find out that this photo studio is owned by Laurel. Now, I do not have a picture of Laurel up on the wall, and that is due to the fact that I went to Staples to print them, and it didn't work. So we're just going to have to use our imaginations. Just imagine an older woman, I would say mid-50s, maybe mid-40s, kind of like a Miss Frizzle vibe. She's a photographer. She's kind of a wacky lady. Now, we just meet Laurel now, but it turns out that Laurel is actually connected to several characters. Arya's photography class that she took over the summer was being taught by Laurel. We find out that Jenna is friends with Laurel because she has hired Laurel to be the photographer for her big party. And then we find out that Lucas is Laurel's assistant, or at least he was. He was being because, she fired him. She fired him because he was stealing supplies and developing his own work. Well, that is very suspicious because does that mean that Lucas is the one who was developing the photos of the 4 girls standing over Allison's grave that night? Arya manages to sweet talk her way into the studio after closing where she is able to get Lucas's things. She's going through his rolls of film, doesn't see anything suspicious until she finds the sleeping pills. Why are sleeping pills important, Chase? Thank you for asking. I'm going to tell you right now. We found out that Emily, that night that she was so drunk she couldn't remember how she got to Allison's grave, turns out wasn't actually drunk. She was drugged by sleeping pills. And the way that we find this out is because Emily is now dating Paige again. That's Mose from Ned's Declassified. And while they were hanging out, Paige found the flask that Emily was drinking from that night. She's like, "Do you want this?" And Emily's like, "No, I'm done for good." So Paige keeps it, takes a little sip of it at Jenna's party, and now she's stumbling. She's knocking stuff over. She's making a scene. They rush her to the hospital where she is tested, and they find out that she is drugged by a certain type of sleeping pill, the same exact sleeping pill that we find in Lucas's camera bag. And then, of course, there's also Jenna. The last time that we saw Jenna, she was begging the girls, the 4 main characters, to not tell anyone that she could actually see. Then, the next time we see her, she's walking around school with no sunglasses, telling everyone she can see. So there's that. Then there's Ezra. Now, I haven't really talked about Ezra too much, mostly because I hate him. And you know what? I don't just hate him because of his inappropriate relationship with a student. I hate him because there's really no reason for him to be in this show. He is never connected to any of the major plots or themes. It's like he only exists for this weird romance storyline that has nothing to do with anything else in the show. Anyway, it looks like he might be involved with some of the major plot lines in this show. Arya finds a bunch of cash in his top drawer. To be exact, $50,000. Now, that immediately opens up some theories. The first one being, is he the one that turned in the evidence to Jason to receive the $50,000 reward? Spicy, if that one's true. The other theory is that maybe he's a drug dealer. Now, if you're a fan of this show, you're probably yelling at the screen right now. Chase, what would possibly make you think that Ezra would deal drugs? Ezra would never deal drugs. That's not the kind of guy he is. To which I would respond with, he's dating a teenager. I'm sorry that I don't think he's always the most upright citizen. Anyway, moving on from Ezra, Emily is having more flashbacks about what happened that night. She remembers being with someone who had a tattoo of an eye on their wrist. Then she bumps into Holden. Now, you probably might not remember Holden. Holden is a character we got very shortly in season 2. He was like a childhood friend of Arya's. He did karate. Well, guess what he has on his wrist? The tattoo of an eye. That's right. Except it's not a tattoo. It's a stamp. It's like a stamp that you get when people, when you go to a bar and they stamp you. And that's where he got it from. He says it's from a party that changes venues all the time. He even says to Emily, "Yeah, I used to see your friend there all the time. Maya?" That's weird. Was Maya with Holden the night that she died? Also, what's up with this party that changes venues? It sounds like a cult. And if it's a cult, and we know that Maya used to be there sometimes, we think about that message from Mona where she says Maya knew. Maybe it's because she knew about this cult. Maybe it's an A cult. Which this leads me to my big theory. And this is something we've been working towards for a while. My theory is that there is someone in this town who has created a cult where they are influencing all of these younger people, high school, college age, and manipulating them. And this person is A. I think it's an older person, maybe someone with a lot of influence over young people. This cult, A, is influenced all of these actions of Mona and Maya's death and Allison's death and Ian's death and all of this weird shenanigans that has taken place in this town for the past 3 seasons. And I think that there is a lot of evidence that supports this big theory. We get a conversation between Jason and Spencer where they're talking about the NAT Club. Now remember, the NAT Club was a club that consisted of Jason, Garrett, and Ian. That's when they would like spy on girls and film them and get them on tape and stuff. That was like the whole plot of season 1. And Jason gives us a little bit of information about that. He says that not only were they like spying on girls and stuff, but they would pay other girls to set up their friends. And that's when Jason says Ian had help. There's no way he could have filmed all that on his own. At times, I thought he was even doing it for someone else. My guess is that all of this was disguised as like a perverted peeping Tom situation, but it actually goes way deeper. We even get a line from the girls in one of these episodes when they're talking about Garrett. They said maybe Garrett was just doing whatever A told him to, and that's how he ended up behind bars. I was always under the impression that A was probably someone who was wronged by Allison and has been doing all of this as revenge. But I'm starting to think that it's more than that. I don't think this is just someone trying to get revenge on a teenage situation. It's not about the teen drama at all. This is someone older. This is someone who is truly messed up in the head. A serial killer, a cult leader, one of those types. This is something that they started. This is a game that they are playing. And they started getting people like Ian and Garrett and Mona involved in their game. You know, picking up people who were outcasts like Lucas and Mona herself. These were losers that were picked on by the popular girls, which is Allison and her friends. What if this cult leader gave them friends, gave them a family, and in return, they're all tied up in this spider web of chaos? I think this is just a sick, twisted game that A loves to play. So who could this person be? My first theory is this lady that we just met, the photography studio lady, Laurel. She's connected with several of the characters, and we know that one major thing about A is it's always been obsessed with photography and filming people. And that does tie in to a woman with a photography studio. We even get a quote from Jenna about Laurel in one of these episodes where she says, "I hired Laurel because I wanted someone who could capture every moment." And when she says that, she says it kind of creepily. Could all of this have just started from a woman who was a photographer who convinced people like Ian and Garrett and Jason to start taking pictures and videos of people around town? And now it has snowballed into this giant serial killer's game? My next theory is someone that we have actually never seen or met, but we have heard a little bit about them. Do you remember earlier when I was talking about Jason talking to Spencer about all of the callers that were calling in with tips? He said, "Everyone's being accused, from Mrs. Welsh to Obama to even you." Now, I just thought maybe Mrs. Welsh was just like a random name, you know, because he also name-checked Obama. And from what I understand, Obama, he only knew Allison a little bit. Let me be clear. I did not kill Allison De Laurentiis. Was that any good? That was close. It was close. But then in episode 5, we hear about Mrs. Walsh again. Jenna shows up to school announcing to everyone and anyone that she can see again. And someone says something like, "Yeah, everyone is so excited for her." Mrs. Welsh was like all over her in the parking lot. Now it's phrased in a way that makes you think, oh, Mrs. Welsh is just like a teacher who was so excited that Jenna could see again. But what if that's not what it truly was? We know that Jenna was hiding the fact that she could see again because she was afraid of a dangerous person. What if that dangerous person is A? Because remember, someone tried to kill Jenna in a house fire last season. And that is something that I had forgotten about. And then Jenna shows up to school being able to see. Mrs. Welsh, who is A, this mastermind, sees Jenna being able to see and is like all over her in the parking lot. Like, why didn't you tell me about this? My thought process is very similar to one that I've mentioned for several characters, being what if Jenna was a part of this A thing, wanted out, almost got killed, and is now terrified of A? Same goes for Lucas and Mona. And then my third suspect is Ted. Now, Ted is a pastor at the local church. We meet Ted because Hannah's mom like goes out on a date with him. Because like Hannah and her mom were like volunteering at the church for this thing. And then like Hannah's mom and him, this is Hannah's mom, by the way, they hit it off. So it seems like they're going to be like dating. But then next thing you know, Ted is on a date with Arya's mom, like very shortly after. What the hell, Pastor Ted? And while they're on the date, Arya's mom and Pastor Ted ended up going bad because Ted eats his ice cream the exact same way as Arya's dad. Apparently he like eats around the outside and like leaves the center or something like that. That made me think like, maybe Ted was actually doing this on purpose. Maybe Ted was playing a mind game on Arya's mom because Ted is an evil mastermind. Another thing is like, we have never seen this Pastor Ted guy before, but now he's all over the place. He's trying to date everyone's mom. He's like, like Dog the Bounty Hunter. This is Ted the MILF Hunter, dog. Plus, no one would ever suspect that the small town pastor was the one leading a cult, right? My other theory is that Ted is an undercover cop. He might be working for the feds trying to get infiltrated into this whole Allison death situation. I think that him being a cop is way more likely than him being A. So we'll see. My fourth suspect is someone that we meet for the very first time in episode 7. The girls see a girl at the coffee shop that looks exactly like Allison, sounds exactly like Allison. They think that this is Allison. She turns around and her name is Cece. Apparently, she was friends with Allison when Allison was still alive. They were like, their parents' beach homes were like next door to each other or something. And Cece seems to know an awful lot about the girls. And she says that Allie has just like told her everything about the 4 girls, like the fact that Emily is gay. But then she slips up and she does something that I find very suspicious. Cece is meeting 3 of the girls, not all 4. She meets Emily, Spencer, and Arya. Hannah is not there. But when Cece is meeting all of them, she looks at Arya and she kind of makes like a shoplifting joke. And Arya's like, oh, you must mean Hannah. No, she's not here. How does Cece know about Hannah's shoplifting? Because when Allison was still alive, Hannah wasn't shoplifting. That happened after Allison disappeared. If anything, Cece and Allison would have talked about her being Hefty Hannah because that is what Allison always called her and talked about. So how does Cece know about that? We also found out that Cece had dated Jason at one point, but it did not end well. But the 4 girls just can't get over how alike Cece and Allison are. They make a statement of, she's just like Allison. And then the other one goes, or maybe Allison was just like her. It seems like Cece may have been Allie's mentor, maybe created Allison being the monster that she was. Because let's not forget, guys, Allison sucked and probably deserved to die. You did not hear that from me. Do not send the feds. Did not. Let me be clear. It is also heavily implied that Cece is the friend that gave Allison the golden anklet that is now being used to get Garrett off free for the murder of Allison and potentially frame Hannah for the murder of Allison. And we get like flashbacks that show that Cece and Allison were around way back in the day. So it's kind of like they've introduced this new character named Cece, but then they gave us some flashbacks that were like, actually, Cece's been here the whole time. I think that's suspicious. I also think there was a big time in the first video I did where I talked a lot about how I think that A is trying to replicate Allison. But now I'm starting to wonder if Allison was replicating A, that A being Cece, that line from the girls. Oh, maybe, she's just like Allison, or maybe Allison was just like her. Was Allison the first protege in this crazy twisted game? I'm also heavily suspicious of Spencer, as always. Even though she is one of the most interesting characters in the show, I can't help but think that she might have something going on. At one point, she gets the info of like, Garrett is not Allie's killer, and she just breaks down crying. And I'm thinking like, Maybe the reason that she's breaking down crying and the reason that she's kind of like, she's always the lead detective trying to solve Allison's death and trying to solve who A is. Maybe the reason that she works so hard on that is because she's trying to prove to herself that she didn't do it. Maybe she's worried that she is the one who killed Allison and she is the one who is A. And that is a pretty solid theory as well. And it's time for me to lock in my pick for who I think A is for episodes 5, 6, and 7. I am 100% going with my theory that this is an older mentor cult leader-like figure. And my main suspects are Mrs. Welsh, Cece, and Laurel the photographer. And considering we haven't actually ever seen or met Mrs. Welsh, I'm going to set her on the back burner because probably not likely to be someone that we've never seen or met, which leaves us with Cece and Laurel. Cece seems way too obvious. I mean, she just showed up randomly one episode and they have been laying it on thick how similar she is to Allison. So I'm going to go with my Laurel the photographer pick. And that is officially what I am locking in. Laurel the photographer. This has been a lot of information. I hope you guys are having a good time. I love this show. Let's keep watching.
It's the perfect time to get caught up on this summer's biggest mystery, our Pretty Little Liars marathon event. And then, in 2 weeks, Hannah's down.
He left me.
And Jenna's secret is out.
What happened to staying blind because she's a target?
Who will she set her sights on next?
What the hell is she up to?
I just watched episodes 8, 9, 10, and 11. And we were pretty much on the same track that we were in the last section, but we do have some more developments. The biggest plot line that happens in this chunk of episodes involves Maya's death. We're finally getting into the death of the latest victim as opposed to just still going over all of Allison's death, which is very exciting. And we do get some pretty wild information about what happened to Maya on the night of her death. The first thing that we learn is that Maya's throat was crushed by like a metal pipe or a pole or something. And that is how she officially died. Meanwhile, the girls find out about a witness that is going to be speaking at Garrett's trial. Turns out there is a witness named Bart, and Bart actually saw Maya get in a car with Garrett the night that she died. Then the girls managed to get into the secret website that had Maya's picture on the front. And it turns out this is not a website made by A. This is a website that Maya made herself. I almost said Mona. I have a really hard time with Maya and Mona. So like, how did Mona, speaking of Mona, how did she even know about Maya's secret website? Well, I mean, she is A, so I guess like, you know, they know everything. Anyway, this website is like her personal blog or like diary. She just puts tons of pictures and videos and just like anything that's on her mind. It's like Tumblr, but like super secret. If you're watching this video, you probably had a Tumblr. But the girls get Caleb, who is Hannah's ex-boyfriend, to break in to the website, and we get to see some of the videos that are hidden on the website. One of the videos is Maya talking to the camera, and she is saying, "I'm such a coward. I have to face my fears." What does that mean? Well, I do have a theory, but let's keep talking about what happened that night. In one of the pictures on the website, Maya actually has that eye wrist stamp tattoo thing. And we talked about that being like a cult or something. Well, Cece ends up inviting Arya and Spencer to a party. And guess what, baby? That is the party that does the eye stamp. And whose party is it? Eric Kahn. That is Noel Kahn's older brother. Eric Kahn, by the way, is played by Robbie Amell, which, you know, always fun to see him pop up and stuff. And it seems like this party seems to be connected to everything in some way. Cece even makes a joke at the party saying that I've seen cops do much worse than that. when the girls were hesitant about drinking alcohol. They're hesitant to drink alcohol because they're underage. Now, we can assume that when she says, I've seen cops, she means Garrett. You know, the guy who's currently on trial for the murder of Allison De Laurentiis. But we do know that Maya attended some of these parties as well. But turns out, Maya didn't just attend some of these parties. Episode 10 starts off with Hannah finding a note that was left on her porch back when Emily was staying with her. And it's a note from Maya to Emily. And the note says, Emily, I'm so sorry for everything. I know we've had a disconnect lately. I hope you'll give me a chance to explain. I have to show you something. Don't call my cell. Someone stole it. Meet me at... And then because this note has just been on the back porch for months and months, the rain damage and everything, they can't read the last line. But there is a date on the note, and it turns out that that note was written the night that Maya died. So the question becomes, what did Maya know that got her killed? What was she even up to? We do find out from Noel Kahn that he and her had a texting relationship. Now, he says that, you know, he's saying that in the way of like, he dealt her weed, but the phrasing of texting relationship, you know who else texts a lot? A. Next thing you know, Emily and Hannah are searching Noel Kahn's family cabin where all these parties take place, and they find out that Maya was actually sleeping and staying there in secret. So the entire time that she was missing and she left Rosewood, she was in the cabin the entire time. And while the two girls are in the cabin, things get a little supernatural. Doors slam shut, windows slam shut, everything is locked. The girls have to break a glass window and bust through like the wood paneling that is closing it in to escape. And when they finally do manage to escape, there is writing on the wall outside that says, I'm saving you for later, -A. This A is aggressive and willing to kill. But this A is still addicted to their game. They could have killed Emily and Hannah right then and there. But that would mess up the game. That would end the game. It's like Joker and Batman, you know? Joker doesn't want to kill Batman because then the game is over. But then we find out some really crazy stuff. See, Noel ends up sending Spencer the video footage, the security footage from his family's cabin the night that Maya died. And the security footage is time-stamped, which means that we see exactly what time it is. And because of that, we know that Maya was still alive after she was seen getting in the car with Garrett. And then at 1 a.m., we see Noel Kahn and Jenna walk into the family cabin at the exact time that we see Maya sneaking around in the front of the cabin. And then at that exact moment, someone reaches out and grabs Maya. I am assuming that whoever it is that grabs Maya at that moment is the killer and probably is A. And since we know that Garrett had already been arrested earlier that night, we know it cannot be him. And we literally see Noel and Jenna in the footage right as Maya's being taken away, so we know it's not them two either. And that is everything that we know about the night that Maya died so far. So honestly, I really think that the ultimate theory here is that most of these people are involved with A in some capacity. And I think that whoever this A is in charge is terrifying to everyone who has been involved. And we get a few moments in these episodes that I think kind of confirms that. At one point, the four girls are talking and they were like, why would Mona tell us about Maya's website? And one of the other girls says, maybe she's scared of someone. Then we get a couple of instances with Jenna. See, Maya's cousin is in town. His name is Nate, and he's been hanging out a lot with Emily. And it's like they've been kind of like working through Maya's death together. Well, he tried to go on a date with Jenna, but Jenna stood him up. There's a long, complicated reason for why that involves Cece, but it's not super important to the mystery, I don't think. Basically, Emily was uncomfortable with Nate hanging out with Jenna because she doesn't trust Jenna, and so she was telling Cece about that, and then so Cece calls him or calls Jenna from her phone and is like, you better stay away from my man. And yeah, it was like Cece was trying to help Emily. I don't know. Anyway, after Nate, who is Maya's cousin, gets stood up by Jenna, he is telling Emily about it. And he says that when he finally called her to ask her why she stood him up, he says, and I quote, she sounded like she thought she was over with someone, but she isn't. Now, at base level, it could just mean, oh, she thought her and Noel were done, but turns out they're back together. I think she's actually talking like she thought she was free of A, but now she has been swept back into A's game. Another moment with Jenna is at the party at Noel Khan's cabin. She is playing a game of truth with Spencer. And at one point, Spencer asks a particular question about Maya's death. And Jenna actually looks over to Cece, almost looking for permission, or like, she looks at her like worried, like waiting for some approval or something. Through this game of truth, we find out that Noel Khan was actually with Jenna and Emily in the car that night that, Jenna claimed that she ran into Emily, who was just drunk in the middle of the road. And we also find out that they didn't find her in the middle of the road. They found her like in a diner, just almost passed out drunk. And when Spencer asks Jenna why she lied about that, she said to protect someone. Interesting. Who is she trying to protect? And to cap off all of the Jenna stuff, at one point, Jenna walks up to Emily and she says something very vague. She says, I need to tell you something about your friend. Be very careful about who you spend your time with, Emily. Very careful. And that is another thing that I've picked up on, which is we get several little hints lately about A, being someone who is very close to the girls. Like, we get several characters throughout these episodes saying stuff like, you thought Mona was one of your good friends. She turned out to be A. And like, even in one of the end credit scenes that are from A's point of view, there's one where there's two A's standing at a jukebox and they play a song that goes like this. Smiling faces sometimes pretend to be your friend. Smiling faces show no traces of the evil that lurks within. Guys, I think that the big reveal of who this evil mastermind A is going to be someone that is very, very close to the four girls. Maybe even one of the four girls themselves. But if we use context clues, Jenna's warning was to Emily, not to the other three girls. So is it someone that is particularly close to Emily, like one of her parents or one of her relationships? And that's very interesting because we also find out from Paige that the night that Emily was drugged and ended up at Allison's grave, she was with Paige at some point. Now, how did Emily manage to do all of this in one night? I don't know. But we find out some other information about Paige in these episodes too. We find out from Cece that Paige and Allison actually knew each other and hated each other. They were practically at a war because Allison constantly called Paige pigskin. And not because of this bob haircut, I don't think. I mean, maybe the bob haircut had something to do with it. Disclaimer, Paige does not have this bob haircut anymore. That was back in season 2. But we do see in a flashback that Allison was blackmailing Paige. At this point, who wasn't Allison blackmailing? This girl, I don't even know what to say. I mean, how does one person so good at blackmailing people? How was she blackmailing Paige? Let me explain. Again, this is one of those crazy stories. Basically, Allison had written a letter to Paige from Emily, confessing her love to Paige, saying all of the dirty things that she wants to do to her. So then Paige wrote Emily back a letter and put it at the drop-off place. That is where Allison walks up, takes the note. Paige is like, what are you doing? Allison's like, Emily didn't write that letter to you. I did. I wonder why someone would want to kill her. Basically, Allison was blackmailing her because Paige's dad is a pastor. And so she's like, I'm going to tell your dad you're gay. But Paige actually fights back. A lot of people just give in to Allison. Paige was ready to participate. At one point, they're playing soccer in gym, and Paige just stomps the shit out of Allison, and then would throw stuff at Allison at lunch. You go, girl. You do your thing. But then we get this really eerie sentence from Paige when Paige is admitting all of this to Emily, talking about her, and she goes, I had no idea what I was up against. She was relentless. And she tells Emily that she was going to take her life because of all of this stuff that was going on with Allison. And the only reason that she didn't was because she felt like that would mean Allison won. And even though that Emily completely trusts Paige, Spencer is very suspicious. In fact, Spencer is almost positive at this point that Paige is A. And even though Emily is constantly defending her, something does happen that is going to be difficult to understand. Spencer and Hannah end up going through Paige's bag, and in her bag is the other earring that was hidden in Allison's grave. Well, it wasn't hidden in her grave. It was put in her grave by Arya, but you know what I mean. So does that mean that Paige is the one who dug up Allison's grave that night? I don't know. Who's to say? That's where episode 11 ended. So I don't really, I don't have any more info. So, I mean, this could very well mean that Paige is A, though. I don't think so. I think she is the major red herring for this batch of episodes. I mean, it is very suspicious that she has the earring, and at one point, she tries to turn Emily on her other three friends. She was one of those people that was like, Mona was your friend, and they ended up being A, so maybe one of the other three could be. Are you sure you could trust your friends? And I mean, another theory is like the reason that we originally suspected Mona was because Mona was bullied so harshly by Allison, but it seems like Paige had it even worse than Mona did. And when she said the thing about the only reason that she stuck around is because she didn't want Allison to win, made me think that Paige was seeing this as a game, and she didn't just ignore Allison after everything that had happened. And, if she was willing, to go to the extreme anyway, maybe she didn't care what happened to her as long as she took down Allison. I mean, maybe even killing Allison to keep her from winning. But like I said, I do think that Paige is just a big red herring. I do not think that she's actually A or the killer. Probably. If it turns out that she is, you guys can clip that part, make a dubstep remix out of it. You're like, this guy's an idiot. Well, that being said, let's talk about someone else who could be the mastermind A, and that is Cece. A, Cece. There's a whole fun thing there where it's like, her name is 2 letters, being the letter C. Cece is A. That's a fun thing. And I mean, it really seems like Cece is like the person who taught Allison how to be a monster. And I also find it very suspicious that Cece was a major part of Allison's life the entire time. And Allison never mentioned her to any of her other friends. Because we get a lot of flashbacks in these episodes, and Cece is with Allison a lot. And at one point, Spencer is helping Cece with this fashion show thing. Cece owns like a clothing store, and Cece steps out of the room. Spencer's in the dressing room getting changed, and a snake is in there with her. And the snake is trying to attack and bite Spencer, but she's locked into the dressing room. It's actually very scary if you're afraid of snakes. I'm not, because I'm a baller, but Cece ends up helping Spencer and getting her out of the dressing room, and then Cece beats the snake to death with a mannequin arm. And, we assume that A is the one who did this, but we can't rule Cece out considering she was the only person in there. And one of the girls makes a pretty good point when they're like, did you get a text from A about the snake thing? And she didn't, which means that might not have even been A. That might have just been Cece messing with Spencer, because she's probably just as twisted as Allison was. Probably thought it would just be funny to set a snake on a girl. So Cece and Paige are 2 people that Emily is close with, friends with, that maybe that was who Jenna's warning could be about, that you need to be careful about your friend. But there is one other person that Emily has been spending a lot of time with as well, and that is Nate, Maya's cousin. They've been spending a lot of time together. In fact, Emily and Nate end up kissing, so that was a confusing situation for her. She's trying to work out what that means, and then Nate thinks that means that they're in love now. But a few things happen with Nate that makes me a little suspicious of him. Nate is asking Hannah for some advice about what to do with Emily, after they kissed. And during this conversation, Hannah actually lets slip to him that Jenna was just pretending to be blind. And when he hears this, he gets very upset. and he actually sees Jenna and he yells at her. And like he does it in a way where he like tries to greet her and she ignores him. And then he goes, "Hey, I know you saw me." And like it could be taken as very much like, "Hey, don't ignore me. I'm talking to you right now." But I think it could be deeper than that. My theory is that he just found out that Jenna saw his face back when Jenna was pretending to be blind, which leads me to believe that maybe Nate is a part of this more than just being Maya's cousin. Do I think that he's A? No, but maybe he was involved with whatever happened to Maya. Maybe Maya called him to like come help her with whatever secret she was doing when she died. Like maybe he's even like a cop or something. And maybe he was with Maya when Maya confronted Jenna about something and he was just like hanging out in the background and he didn't think that Jenna knew that he was there. Or maybe Nate is A, and maybe he just found out that Jenna was pretending to be able to see, and so now he's worried because Jenna could expose him as A. You know, what if he's not even Maya's cousin? What if he is A just messing with Emily? You know, what if no one actually has seen A, even the people that have been working for A? And the entire time, Nate, who could be A, wasn't as cautious around Jenna because he thought that Jenna was blind. But now he just found out that Jenna could actually see. Because when Nate yells out to her, "I know you saw me," Jenna looks up and she looks scared. I do think that we're on to something with that theory, but before we move on, I want to do a new segment that I like to call God Damn It, Ezra. In this batch of episodes, we find out a lot of information about everyone's favorite predator. Did you know that Ezra Fitz's last name is not actually Fitz? It's Fitzgerald. His family are like billionaires, and we meet his younger brother, Wes. Wes, and I do not say this lightly, is way better than him and age appropriate for Arya. Ezra's mom hates Arya and tries to pay her a bunch of money to break up with Ezra. This is something that we find out that she has done before. Turns out Ezra got a girl pregnant when he was in high school, and his mom paid for her to take care of it and to never talk to him again. And when I say take care of it, I don't mean like raise it nicely. Gotta be careful so I don't get demonetized. But then we find out that she did not, in fact, take care of it. She instead took care of it. And Ezra has a 7-year-old child. Which, by the way, because I've never been super sure about the age dynamic here, we can do math since we know that he has a 7-year-old son, and he had that son at like 18. Means that Ezra is 25. And Arya is 17, maybe even 16. So that means that when Ezra's son was born, Arya was 10. So if you're ever watching Pretty Little Liars and you're like, it's really not that bad of an age dynamic. If you're 25 watching this, imagine you start dating a 17-year-old. But anyway, I don't think Ezra is A, and I do think that we're probably getting close to the end of the whole Ezra-Arya storyline. I think once he finds out that he has a son, because he doesn't know yet, I think he's going to go and be a part of the kid's life, and it'll probably cause the breakup of these two. And maybe that opens the door for Arya to actually end up with Wes, Ezra's little brother. Which, that way, you know, that'd be cool. By the way, the actor who plays Wes is the werewolf from Wizards of Waverly Place. So, again, really fun casting. My biggest fear is that Arya and Ezra are going to stay together and, like, work through it, because that's going to be so weird that Arya is just, like, a stepmom to a 7-year-old when she's only 10 years older than him. Like, imagine this scenario, right? Malcolm goes to the local church fair, and there's like a little cakewalk thing where you can walk around the cakewalk, and when the music stops, you land on a number and you win a prize. Well, maybe Malcolm, who is Ezra's son, his name's Malcolm, wins, but they don't have any more cakes. All they have is a bottle of wine. And they go, "Malcolm, would your stepmom like this bottle of wine?" And then Malcolm has to be like, "Sorry, my stepmom isn't old enough to drink. In fact, she can't legally drink for another 4 years." Anyway, segment over. I hate Ezra. There's another guy I don't trust, and that's Ted. I think Ted is a cop. I don't know that for certain, but he gives off cop energy. Oh, and another thing, Arya's mom is dating like a way younger man now. That whole family is a mess. What's crazy is like Arya's dad is dating the girl it was his student at the time in college that he had an affair with his, like, on his wife with, right? So that means that currently all 3 members of this family are all dating someone the same age. Arya's dating a 25-year-old, her dad is dating a 25-year-old, and her mom is dating like a 25 to 30-year-old. The only person who isn't dating a 25-year-old is her little brother, who I haven't seen him in so long, I don't even remember what his name is. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know if he went off to shoot some other show or something, but we haven't seen him in ages. All right, it's time for me to lock in my guess for this section of episodes. I could always double down on what I locked in last time, which is the Laurel the photographer guess. The only issue is we don't hear or see from her these entire 4 episodes. And that is a lot of episodes to not be in if you are A. So I am going to shift gears here a little bit. I'm very, very suspicious of Nate, who is Maya's cousin. I think something went down with him and Jenna, and that's why there was that weird altercation when he found out that she could actually see. And like, my heart is telling me to lock in Cece because it's very obvious that Cece is involved somehow, but I just can't seem, like, it just seems too obvious. And I can't shake the feeling that something weird is up with Maya's cousin Nate. So that is what I'm going to lock in. I feel like I'm going to regret that. I feel like maybe I should lock in someone that we have met before season 3, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with it. I'm locking in Nate.
Tuesday, the liars set a trap for A.
Be careful and wear sensible shoes. Hey, I wear 3 inches of nothing.
But A is always one step ahead.
It's not possible.
Hey guys, I just want to take a quick second, real fast, just to tell you about a really cool film that I'm a part of. If you only know me from YouTube, I am an actor and I'm a part of a really cool, like, slasher film that takes place all in a recording studio. And so
test.
Yo.
We're ready to go.
What are you doing?
Everything's ready.
Yo, come on, man, we gotta lock in, dude.
Our dream.
Their past comes haunting, and their future holds no answers.
Please tell me it isn't me.
Now their greatest nightmare
Where's Mona?
is on the loose.
Tell me you still have your keys.
What? What just happened? Dude, I think we just got the reveal. Okay, so I just watched episode 12. I usually wait 3 or 4 episodes before I jump back in here, but okay, let me calm down. I'm freaking out a little bit. Okay, first of all, let me say this is probably one of the best episodes of this entire show. The episode starts with a scene and we see that someone is dead, but we don't know who. And then, like, the whole episode flashes back to a few hours earlier, and like the whole episode we're like, oh my God, who is going to die? Which leads me to the point that we were like totally right about Nate. Well, not really, but there was something up with him. He's not A, he's Maya's stalker. And so he was obsessed with Maya. Now he's obsessed with Emily. And so he takes Emily and Paige and like kidnaps them in this cabin in the woods. And he's got Paige tied up and he's going to kill Paige right in front of Emily because Emily stole Maya away from him. So now he's going to take Paige away from her. And the girls know that there's something wrong. And so they go to one location. They send Caleb to a different location. They're like splitting up because there's 2 places that Emily could be. Caleb is the one who ends up finding Emily, and Nate, his name's not even Nate, by the way. Emily and Nate are in this sick fight scene at the top of a lighthouse, and they're fighting and everything, and then Emily stabs Nate to death. Or so we think. Caleb manages to get to the top of the lighthouse right as Emily is stabbing him to death. And so Caleb's like, oh my God, Caleb brought a gun, which, you know, like, I don't know. It's easier said than done. But at this point, if I was one of the 4 girls, I would probably just have a gun all the time. But then, I don't know, that's kind of risky, because what if you shoot someone thinking they're A, and then it turns out to not be A? It's just like Lucas, the yearbook guy. Anyway, Caleb sees what happens. He sets the gun down and he's hugging Emily and he's like, it's okay. It's okay. But it's not okay, because Nate was stabbed, but he wasn't all the way dead. And so he grabs the gun and he shoots Caleb. I think Caleb is dead. And we still don't know if Caleb is alive or not. He's like, at the time of this episode ending, he's in surgery. And I'm already upset, right? Because Caleb is one of my favorite characters in the show. He's a cool guy. But then something even worse happens. While all of this Nate being a stalker stuff is going on, A actually had big plans for the evening. Nate kidnapping Emily and Paige actually interrupted A's plans. And so Mona, who has escaped from the psych hospital, her plans are ruined. There was no reason for her to even leave. But we see Mona, and she's in the A cave, and she's in the black hoodie with the black glove, like she's in A attire, and she is in there with another black hoodie wearing person. Mona gets a phone call, gets off the phone, looks at the other A, and goes, change of plans. This change of plans is the fact that Nate kidnapped Emily, and so it threw off whatever in the world they had planned for that evening. But it doesn't even really matter, because it works out for A and Mona and everybody, because their plan for that evening was they were going to be framing Paige for the murder of Maya. And once Paige was framed for the murder of Maya, Garrett would be let out of jail. Well, since Nate ends up getting stabbed to death, and we find out that he is Maya's stalker, he gets blamed for Maya's death. And so Garrett is let out of jail anyway. So even though A's plan didn't work out, it still worked out. Why do good things happen to bad people? I mean, A is even like grateful. They end up calling Emily A with like a distorted voice filter. And they're like, Emily, we owe you one. Or they say Emily, I owe you one. We know that there's multiple. The girls don't necessarily know that there's multiple. But anyway, we find out all of this information because A is walking with Mona, and they're both dressed up in the black hoodies or whatever, and they're taking Mona back to the psych hospital. And then the other A, who is turned around like this, and so we just see the back of the hoodie, they turn around, and it's Toby. It goes exactly like this. Watch this. Okay, so I'm A, I'm turned around, and then Toby. And oh my God, like my heart sank, bro. Like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And he had this really creepy look on his face. And he and Spencer had sex for the very first time in this episode. Toby is A, and has he been doing this whole time? After everything we have been through with Toby, he has been A? I don't even know what to believe. I don't even know if it's real. I mean, Caleb might be dead. Toby could be A. The male representation in this show is dwindling quickly. But here's the thing. I don't even know if this is like the big reveal or not. This could be the thing, like Toby's been in charge this whole time. We don't know. The episode ended. There's still like 12 episodes left in this season. Surely this isn't the big reveal. And I understand that this is probably a lot more shocking for me than it is for you, because even if you haven't watched this show, you can see how much longer this video has, which means that if the video ends here, then you know that Toby did it. Toby is the big boss. However, if you look down there and there's still like 2 hours left, then you know, okay, something else is up. But I don't know that. I don't have the luxury of seeing how long this video is. I'm making it right now. I need to calm down. I am going to move forward under the impression that Toby is not the big A in charge. I'm going to operate under the same assumption that I have for others like Jenna and Lucas, and that Toby is being blackmailed by A into participating. Might be wishful thinking. I feel heartbroken and betrayed. I can only imagine what Spencer's feeling. I'm not the one that's been dating Toby for the past year. Well, he's a fictional character, Chase. He is a fictional character. He is not real. I'm not even gonna lock in a guess for this part, because it's either this video's over and I'm like, the video's over and that just means Toby did it, or I'll be back in a second with the next batch of episodes and we'll know that we're still rocking. Okay, yeah, all right. Hopefully see you in a second.
Their love has endured every struggle, but the biggest is still to come.
I love him.
I'm not gonna let you ruin him.
And a new discovery rocks the liars to their core.
We're in.
Oh my God.
Fellas, ladies, this show is so good, dude. Okay, so I just got done watching episodes 13, 14, 15, and 16. The show is probably the best that it has ever been, like right now. Anybody who watches these videos and they're like, Pretty Little Liars sucks. Hey, you suck. Please subscribe. I'm sorry I said that you suck. But yeah, episode 12, which was the episode from the last part where we found out about Toby, and then the following episode, episode 13, are probably like the best back-to-back episodes of television I've ever seen. Because episode 13 is the Halloween episode, and dude, they always crush the Halloween episodes. Okay, we'll cut to the chase. No pun intended. Was Toby the big reveal? I don't think so. You probably also want to know if Caleb is still alive. Yes, he's okay. He had surgery. He's fine. And if you're one of those Toby heads out there and you're like, say it ain't so, Toby, he is definitely a part of the A team, but I don't think he's in charge. So, you know, in fact, something happens that makes me think I'm almost positive that he is not the one in charge, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Since the Halloween episode is so sick, I'm just going to kind of do like a whole little section right now just talking about that episode. It's honestly just like an amazing, I'm rambling way too much about it. It's just an amazing episode of TV. It's a great mystery. Like the whole episode starts with Mona handing someone in a black hoodie, so one of the A's, some pills and bullets, which is just like baller. I'm kind of assuming that this person in the black hoodie is Toby. We do not know for sure. The whole episode takes place on a haunted train ride. So it's like a closed in like train car mystery. And everyone is there. We've got the 4 girls. We've got Caleb. We've got Toby. We've got Ezra's not there for most of it, but Lucas is there, and Jason is there, and Jenna and Noel is there. Bro, even Garrett is there. Oh, and Adam Lambert is there. Bet you weren't expecting that. Maybe Adam Lambert is starts with an A, Adam. We see that Mona escapes from the psych ward, so Mona is also there. I'm standing in front of her, sorry. But the really cool thing is that Garrett is there. So Garrett is out of jail. He is on the train car. He's talking to Spencer outside one of the train cars. So it's so sick. It's just like the wind is hitting. They're outside. This train is going and they're talking to each other. And Garrett's like trying to tell her everything he knows. And I'm gonna read this verbatim so I get it right. But he's like, I'm sorry. I liked you. You were the one I really wanted to keep safe, but I wasn't strong enough. I thought I had everything under control, but I didn't. I didn't even know what the game was truly about. That last sentence is super wild to me because I think that he just admitted that he is a part of this game and it got too big. It got too crazy for him. And so he wanted out. And that is what we've been saying this entire video. This wasn't just high school drama and photos of girls through their window. This is a serial killer's game. He then goes on to tell Spencer about the night that Allison died. The night that, we saw that iconic video of Garrett and Jenna and Melissa and Ian all in Allie's bedroom. Well, apparently Garrett and Jenna left Melissa and Ian to go talk. So they leave the house. And as they're walking through the backyard, they run into Allison. Jenna is furious because Allison blinded her. And so they're trying to like almost fight. And Jenna's like, do something. And so Garrett picks up like this, he picks up this hockey stick, field hockey stick, and he pretends to kill Allison. Jenna's blind, so she doesn't know that Allison is not actually dead. Jenna actually thinks that Garrett just murdered Allison for her, but Garrett didn't. It almost seemed like him and Allison had an understanding, like this was almost planned. So Garrett comes back later and sees Allison talking to Arya's dad, and they're arguing about the whole cheating situation, because if you don't remember, Arya and Allison caught Arya's dad cheating. Well, Garrett sees them arguing, and so he runs off. And that is the last time that anyone saw Allison alive. So Spencer is hearing this and she's like, Garrett, wait, let me go get Arya. You're going to say this to her face. But that's when the girls find out that Arya has been kidnapped. And so A sends a text to the girls that's like, guess who won't make it to the end of the line? Oh no. Now this becomes like a Mission Impossible thing where it's like, we've got a time limit. Arya is going to die before the train gets to the end at the station. Then someone, I assume A, tries to like strangle Spencer. And Spencer and A have this whole fight scene where Paige shows up, saves Spencer. They go Mose from Ned's Declassified. I know you're kind of a freak on TikTok, but I appreciate you helping my girl. Meanwhile, Arya wakes up. She's in a wooden crate. She's been locked in a wooden crate. And she looks over and she sees Garrett's dead body. A, I'm assuming, has killed Garrett to keep him from talking to the girls too much about what he knows. And I'm assuming because Garrett was shot in the head that it has to do with the bullets and that, Mona gave to the other A at the beginning of this episode. I'm assuming that's Toby, which means that Toby shot a guy in the head. I also want to take a moment to pause from all of this chaos to talk about a really funny line that Jenna says. The girls are looking everywhere for Arya, and they go to Jenna and they go, have you seen Arya? And Jenna goes, no, but she has a thing for authority figures, so she might be up with the train conductor. Ah, that was good, dude. That was good. Not so funny. We hear two people, a male and female voice, and they're trying to push the crate that Arya and Garrett are in off the moving train. And this would kill Arya. And during they're struggling to push it, it's pretty heavy because at this point you got Garrett's dead body and Arya's in there. I don't know how much she weighs, but I mean, just Garrett's dead body alone, probably pretty heavy. So they're struggling. And the male voice goes, we just kind of hear like, lie to me. I can't do this. Very, very brief. It makes it sound like whoever is helping push Arya to her death doesn't seem ecstatic about it. They almost push the crate off the moving train. Last second, Arya finds a screwdriver, stabs the guy voice through the crate, and then the girls show up and manage to save Arya right before she goes falling to her death. I wish that was as crazy as it gets, but then after that, they're all being held in the train car by the cops because, people were murdered. And Toby and Noel Khan end up getting into a fight where they knocked down they had this the whole one of the train cars had a giant table that was covered with ice. And that's where all the drinks and beverages were. Well, as they're fighting, they knock over that table. It falls, shatters, and in the ice is Allison's dead body. The body that was stolen from Allison's grave. Then the last image of the episode is it's footage of the area where Allison's body ended up being found, a year after she went missing, and you just see a hand, like the music video for Thriller. You see a hand sticking out of the ground. Was that Allison's hand? Is this insinuating that Allison is actually alive, or is she like a zombie, or is she a ghost? Speaking of ghosts, before we move on, I want to talk about one of the subplot for this Halloween episode, which involves Hannah's mom. So the whole subplot of this episode, Hannah's mom and Ted the pastor are doing trick or treat at their house. So they're giving out, candy to kids. And this one little girl ends up getting lost. Like she's lost. She can't find her parents or whatever. And she ends up in their house. And so Hannah's mom is trying to help this little girl. But guys, get this. I think this little girl is a ghost. And that's not just me doing a conspiracy here. The show pretty much is like, hey, this little girl's a ghost. She keeps disappearing. And when Hannah's mom touches her hand, it's freezing cold. And they have this, they talk a lot in the episode to each other. And at one point, they're like, hey, do you need to call your mom? Call your mom. And this is what the little girl says, verbatim. I called my mother. She answered the phone, and when I asked her to come and get me, she got really upset and started to cry. Why is she mad at me? I bet my sister told her I ran away. My sister's always telling lies, getting me in trouble. We're sisters, but we fight all the time, over everything, even our dolls. I think she just likes to fight. Do you think she told my mom something bad about me? Guys, I think that this little ghost girl might be Allison's sister? Like, it kind of like, I mean, this could just be me, but it kind of sounds like Allison had either like a twin sister and murdered her her twin sister when they were like 4. It's just so creepy, the story about how her sister is always lying and trying to fight. It sounds just like Allison, but then she also talks about dolls, right? And dolls is very much a Mona thing. Could this be Mona's sister? Like, it definitely gives off the vibe that whoever this little girl is was killed as a child by her sister. And what's even crazier about this is this show, up to this point, has alluded to supernatural type things, but there's always a logical explanation, or the explanation is just it's A who's a super genius or whatever. But this is a very real, like, they're like, this is a ghost. And it feels like this could be a turning point for this show. Like, at this point, we could start getting more and more supernatural elements. So, this section of episodes is crazy considering we've only talked about the Halloween episode and Garrett has been murdered and we have a brand new suspect with Arya's dad. And Arya's dad is not just the major suspect for the Halloween episode. All of the episodes we watched in this section, he is the major suspect. We find out that he was being blackmailed by Allison, who wasn't at this point. And we find out from Allison's diary, plus Meredith, who is the person that Byron is Arya's dad's name, Byron was cheating with. Both of them confirm the story that Byron met with Allison the night that she died, which means that Garrett was telling the truth. Rest in peace, my boy Garrett. Now, this is obviously a rough situation for Arya to be in because she's having a hard time thinking that maybe her dad killed her best friend. But he does end up coming clean about everything to all 4 girls, and he tells them that what happened that night. He goes and meets Allison where he's supposed to drop off some money, and he tells Allison, you're not getting any more money. If you've got to tell my wife, you've got to tell my wife. I'm done. Then he just left. The next morning, Allison is announced missing, and so he just was like, well, I guess no one, she can't tell my wife if she's missing, but he still knows that, like, Arya probably doesn't believe him 100%. It's hard to trust him. And so he looks at Arya and he goes, look, I'm going to go to the police and I'm going to tell them everything that happened. And, whatever happens, happens. This convinces Arya that her dad is telling the truth. And so she burns the diary pages that would prove that her dad met with Allison the night that she died. So now, I'm out of breath, but let's talk about Lucas. Lucas gives us a lot of information and actually confirms one of our biggest theories that we have had for multiple of these videos. Lucas is acting absolutely terrified of Mona, who is back at school with all of them. She's been given a clean bill of health, her medicine is working, and she is allowed back in society. And Lucas is panicking. It seems like he is really stressed out that Mona is back at school. And then, this is crazy, we see Toby try to run over and kill Lucas. So at this point, we're pretty sure Toby shot Garrett in the head, and now we know 100% that Toby tried to run over and murder Lucas. Toby is a murderous man, but Lucas doesn't know that it was Toby that tried to run him over. He thinks it was Mona that tried to run him over. And he tells Hannah all of this. He's freaking out and he's like, hey, I'm leaving Rosewood High. Mona has been blackmailing me into doing things for her. So that just confirmed a really huge theory for us, where I've been saying this for a long time, is I think that A and the A team is mostly consisted of a mastermind and then people who are being blackmailed and forced to do things for them. A is not doing all of the dirty work. A convinces people like Lucas or Jenna, or maybe even Toby, but it seems, I don't know, he seems like he might be in deeper, to do little tasks for A. So that way, if they got caught, that the real A isn't at risk. Does that make sense? I got a comment one time and it's been stuck in my head where it's like, hey, why do you repeat so much information? And it's like, hey, I know you guys are seeing all of this at once, but for me, there's a lot of time in between. But all of it doesn't matter. It all leads to a conversation between Toby and Mona when they're in the A cave together. It looks like they're about to go on a mission together. And we see Toby is in the black hoodie with the black gloves, and he looks at Mona and he goes, I still feel like we're rushing this. And Mona says, I told you, I'm not the one calling the shots. They need to know that she's in charge. So we officially get confirmation that Mona and Toby are not A. They are a part of the A team, but they are not the person who is in charge. And Mona says she's in charge, which means that the person we are looking for is female. That really doesn't narrow it down. There's not a lot of guys in this show. I mean, do you guys remember this guy? I don't even remember his name. We haven't seen him in so long, but I had his picture already printed from season 1, so I kept him up here. I couldn't remember his name. And also, all the guys in this show are brunette, except for Jason. Okay, back to Toby. Everything's about to change for Toby, because in this batch of episodes, Spencer catches Toby dressed up as A, and she finds out that he is a part of the A team. And when she catches him, it's crazy, dude. But he turns around. He's wearing the black hoodie, and she sees his face, and she's shocked. And he goes, how long have you known? And then she shows, she was setting up a surprise for their anniversary, so she was in his apartment, and she found a fake ID badge where he was going in and out of the psych hospital visiting Mona. And Spencer slaps Toby, and Toby disappears into the night. Spencer is distraught. This was the love of her life. She trusted him more than anything, and it turned out that he has been A, and he has been one of the people that has been destroying her life over the past 3 years. Now, that is all we know about that situation up to this point, because that happened at the end of episode 16, and that is as far as we've seen. So I'm sure we'll be getting some more information in the next batch of episodes, but as for right now, all we know is that Spencer knows. So, other suspects. Since we officially know that Mona and Toby aren't the one in charge, who could be the one in charge? There's always Jason, that is Allison's older brother. Jason has 2 strange moments in these batch of episodes. At one point, him and Lucas give each other kind of a knowing look, almost like they're a part of something together. Jason also has a moment where he's talking to Spencer and Toby shows up, and Jason looks genuinely afraid of Toby. And since we know that Toby is A, it kind of makes us wonder, does Jason know that Toby is A, or, a part of the A team? There's Jenna, who I'm pretty sure is not the one in charge. It really seems like she genuinely believed that Garrett is the one that killed Allison. And since she was there that night when she, thought it happened and she kind of told him to do it, I think she's just been trying to cover her own ass so that she doesn't get like an accessory for murder charge. And that's why she set up Garrett, turned him into the cops and stuff. I'm really glad we got that kind of answer, because if you could go back to season 1 and season 2, when there was that reveal where it was oh my God, Jenna and Garrett admitted pretty much to killing Allison. And I never understood that once we found out that wasn't really the case. And it turns out it's because Jenna really did think that he killed Allison, and he was just going along with it because he was I don't want her to know I was lying. Pretty crazy stuff, but it's cool. So who is this person in charge? Who are we going to lock in? We know that we're looking for a she, not that it narrows down anything, but that it still leaves Laurel the photographer up for grabs. Cece is still up for grabs. And there's even Paige, who we found out was in a giant war with Allison before Allison died. But then there is a big piece of the puzzle that we are ignoring right now, which is the fact that A was trying to kill Arya on Halloween. Not scare her, not terrorize them, kill her for real. So why were they trying to kill Arya in particular? Why not one of the other girls? Well, that leads me to a dream sequence that Arya has while she has the flu and she's being drugged up by Meredith. If you don't remember, Meredith is the girl that Arya's dad was cheating on his wife with. While Arya's in this, drugged and flu state, she sees Allison and Arya goes, "Is this a dream?" And Allison goes, "No, I'm more real than I've ever been." And Arya asks her, "What's it like?" And Allison says, "I know everything. I see everything. And Arya goes, do you see A? And Allison says, everywhere I look. You all do. I'm surprised Spencer hasn't found that out yet. Then Arya asks her if it's true that she was blackmailing her dad. And Allison says, I was so desperate for that money. And Arya goes, did my dad kill you? And Allison says, do I look dead to you? Now, she says some other little things, and everything that she says and does comes true, by the way. And then as she goes to leave the room, she like sets a doll down that was on that side of the room. She sets it down by the door, and she looks at Arya and she says, you know why I picked you, right? And then she leaves. Arya wakes up. That doll actually moved from one side of the room to the other. And we have seen this happen several times. The girls will either be medicated from being in the hospital, or they'll be like on medicine for being sick, or they'll be injured. Like one time Emily passed out from smoke inhalation because A tried to kill her in a burning building, and they dragged Emily out, and Emily saw Allison. So whenever they're in these like drugged or hurt or dream states, they see Allison, and Allison always gives them information that turns out to be true. And because of this, we have constantly brought up the theory that maybe Allison is just still alive. And now that we have seen like a real ghost, we saw that little ghost girl in the Halloween episode, I'm wondering if it could be a supernatural explanation. And what is up with that line? You know why I picked you, right? What does that mean? Picked her for what? Also, why was Allison desperate for the money? Her parents are very wealthy. That's what this show does so good, right? It gives you these big answers to mysteries that you had ages ago, that you had totally even forgotten about. Because by the time you get the answers for those mysteries, there's a million new mysteries. It's a really great way of keeping you engaged the entire time. But I have to lock in my pick for who I think A is for episodes 13, 14, 15, and 16. Who is the big A? Who is the one in charge? Which leads me back to a theory that I have locked in a million times over the past 3 seasons, and I keep coming back to it. I think Spencer could be the answer. I mean, that line from Allison where she goes, I see A everywhere. You all do. I'm surprised Spencer hasn't figured that out yet. What does Spencer have to do? Like, why is it Spencer that has to figure it out? I really think it could be Spencer doing this the entire time and she just doesn't even know it. So that is what I'm locking in. I know that's dumb. I know we've learned a lot of new information and this is just going with an older theory, but I think it still holds up.
Why are you not all go-go gadget about this? This is big.
It's a night of truth or dare.
Why did you lie? Where's the video? Answer the question.
But can the truth also be a lie?
I'm A.
I do not know what is going on. So I just watched episodes 17, 18, 19, and 20, and we are flying towards the end of season 3. So much is happening. I don't know what is in relation to the mystery and what is just teen drama plot lines. Regardless, I don't think I'm anywhere close to figuring out who A is, and some absolute insane stuff happens in this batch of episodes, starting with one of the craziest things that has happened. So the girls end up finding like an old notebook that Allison was writing in, and she was actually like writing back and forth some notes with someone else. We find out that that someone else is actually Cece, and Allison and Cece are talking about some beach hottie. Well, throughout this batch of episodes, we go on quite the journey to try to discover who this beach hottie is, because Cece tells the girls that Allison was pregnant. But Allison never told Cece or anyone who the father was before she died. So all we really have to go off of is whoever this beach hottie is probably the father. And when Cece was talking to Allison, when Allison first told her that she is pregnant, she was like, well, have you told the father? And Allison was like, I can't. If he found out, he would kill me. Which usually is just something that people say. But considering Allison ends up dead shortly thereafter, I think we have to take this seriously. Who could this beach hottie be? Who could be the father of her baby? Toby? Ian, remember Ian? He was pregnant, he was Melissa's baby daddy, so we know that he's fertile. Well, it turns out Emily sees a picture of Detective Wilden at Cape Bay, which is the beach where Allison and Cece were at, so it looks like Detective Wilden might be the baby daddy. And at the time of this happening, I believe Detective Wilden would have been like a senior in college, or he might have even already graduated and been in the police academy, which would make him like 21 to 22 at the youngest, and Allison at the time was 15. What is up with the grown men in this town? Like, are all of the guys at Rosewood High that are the same age as all of these girls just lonely? And they're like, hey, you know, like they're at Thanksgiving dinner and their grandma is like, well, do you not have a nice little girlfriend at school? And they're like, no, all the girls at school like 40-year-old men. Insanity, dude. The stuff with Detective Wilden gets even crazier somehow because the girls, they tell Jason, which, you know, is Allison's older brother, that they think that Wilden is Allison's baby daddy. So now he like kind of confronts him, which causes Wilden to go and confront the girls. And they tell him like, we're on to you, dude. So then he goes to Hannah's mom, because if you remember all the way back in season 1, Wilden was sleeping with Hannah's mom so that Hannah's mom could get Hannah out of trouble for shoplifting. We have been in this show. We are in the trenches of this show, dog. Anyway, he goes and visits Hannah's mom to kind of intimidate her and be like, hey, that's a nasty rumor that your daughters are spreading around. I need you to stop that. But the way he's acting makes her think like, oh my God, I think the rumor might be true. I think this dude might have been Allison's baby daddy. So she kicks him out and she's leaving the restaurant and he follows her in his cop car and pulls her over. And so he makes her get out the car. He's threatening her. He gets a little physical with her. And he even says, you shut Hannah up or I'm going to shut her up. And he's like blocking her car. She's trying to drive away. He reaches for his gun. Hannah's mom runs over Detective Wilden. Later that night, Hannah's mom's in the kitchen of her house drinking some whiskey. Keep that in mind. Hannah's talking to her and Hannah's mom is like, I think I killed Detective Wilden. So the two of them go back to the scene of the accident. Detective Wilden's body is gone, but the car is still there. So yeah, if Detective Wilden is still alive, then he is a major suspect. But if he's dead, then I don't know. Because like the theory here is like if he got a 15-year-old girl pregnant when he was in his 20s and about to become a cop, then he might have killed Allison to keep that from getting out so that way it doesn't ruin his life. You know, the consequences of his own actions. Cece seems to believe that theory because Cece is seen leaving town. She's packing her bags because Detective Wilden has confronted her, because we know that Cece knew that Detective Wilden was with Allie in Cape Bay. So we know that Cece, Allison, and Detective Wilden were all together at Cape Bay, but then we find out that there was another person with the three of them, and that is Melissa, Spencer's older sister. And this gets even more weird because Jason has a flashback to the night that his sister died, and he remembers seeing Melissa and Cece arguing in front of the house. Cece says that Melissa and her were just arguing because of like some tapes that they were trying to get from Allison. We already kind of know about that. Allison had the tapes that the NAT club were filming. I don't know. It's still kind of murky. Speaking of flashbacks, Emily has some more flashbacks to the night that she was at Allison's grave when the body got stolen, and she remembers seeing a blonde woman in a red coat. Now, this woman in a red coat has been seen a couple of times now. Hannah actually saw the same blonde woman in the red coat all the way back in like episode 16 or whatever. And Spencer sees the red coat lady in episode 20. And it turns out that this lady in the red coat is the A in charge. And the reason we know this is because we get a conversation with the four girls and they're talking about trying to figure out who is in the red coat because she is the captain of the A team. So now we kind of know what we're trying to solve here. We're trying to solve who is the lady in the red coat with the blonde hair. The girls have two theories as to who could be in that red coat. The first one being Cece. That is someone who looks just like Allison. And that's very funny because their other theory is, what if it's just Allison? The girls shut down that theory pretty quickly because it's absurd, but I still think it's got legs. But yeah, Cece is definitely the obvious answer if we're like, who is that in the red coat? She's one of the only characters with blonde hair. We know that she's just as mischievous and manipulating as Allison was. We get a scene where Cece blatantly lies to Arya. She's like, yeah, my car got towed. Meanwhile, she's sitting in her car. We see her sitting in her car on the phone. It felt definitely heavy-handed from the show, though, so I think that Cece might be who the show wants us to suspect. So it's kind of like, and she's one of the only blonde characters. But a thing about the red coat with the blonde hair is it could be a wig. And since it could be a wig, that means that it doesn't necessarily have to be a female who is in the red coat, which again, doesn't eliminate any suspects. We can talk about Meredith, who is the girl that Arya's dad was having an affair with. She's older now, like she's graduated college, she's a teacher. She goes psycho and drugs and attacks Arya in the basement of her home. And after that whole situation happens, Arya's dad called Meredith's dad or whatever, and Meredith left town, but he found out that she has had a long history of issues. So the theory there could be that Meredith has had a long history of issues, which means that she could have been A this whole time. I don't know what her motive would be. I don't quite get it. Plus, A would have never gotten so sloppy as to reveal themselves to all four girls by locking them in the basement and attacking them and stuff. So that being said, let's leave the red coat stuff for a second and talk about someone who we know is not the person in the red coat, and that's Toby. And we know that because Toby and Mona are A, but they're not the person in charge. We get a flashback in episode 17 where we see Allison visiting Toby when he is in juvie. Now, if you remember, Toby was in juvie after Jenna's accident where the fireworks going off made her blind. Allison, who did it, forced Toby to take the blame for the accident, or else she was going to reveal the big secret that Toby and his stepsister Jenna were sleeping together. So Allison goes and visits Toby while he's in juvie, and she confronts him about being A. Because if you don't remember, before Allison died, she was being harassed by A with the texts and the messages and everything, just like how the girls would be later. And this visit at juvie does give us a lot of answers. First of all, Toby is wearing a do-rag. I guess the show was like, hey, how do we make it look like how do we tell the audience Toby's in jail right now? Put a do-rag on him. It's absolutely insane, dude. It's messed up. It's really messed up. It'd be different if we'd ever seen Toby wearing a do-rag before or since, but literally it was just like he was in juvie, and so it's like he only wore a do-rag while he was at juvie. Do-rag Toby can't hurt you. He isn't real. Anyway, Allison straight up accuses do-rag Toby of being A. He denies it. And I believe him because he says, I wish I knew who it was because I'd offer my services. And Allison's like, I wasn't the only one outside that window. Why aren't you harassing my friends too? In which Toby responds while wearing his do-rag, you and your posse deserve much worse. So what this tells us is that Toby was not the original A that was harassing Allison before she was killed. But it does seem like when he got out of juvie, he found who A was, which involved Mona, and offered his services to help A and be a part of the A team. Or perhaps Mona and the big boss in the red coat actually reached out to Toby to be like, hey, do you want revenge on these girls? And when it comes to Toby, there is a line of dialogue that Emily gives to Spencer. She doesn't know that Toby is A at this moment, but she does know that him and Spencer broke up. And so she does this line of dialogue that's like, hey, sometimes things look bad and they're actually not. So that kind of felt like the show was giving us that, hey, maybe Toby's not bad after all, but considering I'm pretty sure he shot Garrett in the head and we saw him try to run over Lucas, I think he's pretty bad. Spencer has been falling apart ever since she found out that Toby is A, to the point where she even actually starts attacking and strangling Mona at one point. Then A almost kills Spencer by locking her in a sauna and turning the temperature all the way up. Arya manages to show up just in time to save Spencer. So that's good. But at the end of that episode, Spencer tells Arya, call the other girls. I've got to tell you something. I know who A is. And that's all we know at this point because that was the end of the episode. But we can assume that Spencer is about to tell the other girls that she found out that Toby is a part of the A team, which is very scary because A had made a threat to Spencer saying, if you tell about Toby, I will kill one of your three. I would like to point out that the way that this threat was delivered is one of the most bizarre message delivery systems we've seen in this show. Spencer puts on her sunglasses, and etched on the inside of the sunglasses is the message. You rat, one of your three dies. Okay, what else should we talk about? The therapist. The therapist is back in town. She's actually opening back up her practice in her office. Mona gives the therapist a visit, giving her like a flower as a present. And the therapist looks absolutely terrified of Mona. But I also wonder if maybe Mona is visiting the therapist with more than just a regular thank you. The theory being that the therapist could be that older mentor figure that is in the red coat, which she's literally in a red shirt in this picture. And she's the one running everything. And so when Mona shows up and says thank you, maybe she's saying thank you for, being the leader of A. We do have some evidence that kind of supports this theory, like the whole thing of like Mona not going to jail and going to the psych hospital was done because of the therapist. So yeah, then we can talk about Jason. This poor man is still just trying to figure out who killed his little sister. As I've already mentioned, he has been working with Emily in this section of episodes. They were trying to figure out the picture of Wilden with Allison and Cece stuff. Well, they get the picture, and there's a picture of Allison with Wilden and Cece all standing together, and apparently Melissa is the one who took the picture. But as they're leaving the building with the picture, they're in the elevator shuts down. Emily just barely manages to escape the elevator before it slams shut with Jason inside, and it free falls multiple stories with Jason inside. He somehow survives this incident. But when he wakes up and they get him to the hospital, the picture of Detective Wilden with Allison in Cape Bay is missing. The girls and Jason think that A is trying to kill off all of the members of the NAT club. Remember, that was Garrett, Jason, and Ian. Ian and Garrett are dead, and it looks like A just tried to kill Jason too. I say that I'm pretty sure it's A who is trying to kill them because A sends a message to Jason right before this happens. They show up at Jason's house and there's just 100 bottles of whiskey on his front porch, which not only is that super expensive, but it's what's up with all this whiskey in these episodes? Hannah's mom's drinking this whiskey. This whiskey's all over Jason's porch. And in one of the end credit scenes that we see from A's point of view, A pours a glass of whiskey. So either this was some sort of product placement that they just really put in the show for a couple episodes, or this whiskey has something to do with the mystery. Meanwhile, we see Ren, him and Spencer make out, and he confesses his love for her, which is weird because it wasn't too long ago that he kissed Hannah and confessed his love for her. During this time, Spencer's sister, Melissa, makes a comment to Spencer saying that Ren is bad company. We've already been pretty suspicious of him this entire season, but I feel like even more so now. Because that's what's so interesting about Ren is he's a largely forgettable character for most of this show, but he's actually been there for some pretty key moments. Like when they discovered Ian's dead body in the cabin in the woods, Ren was there. So is that what are our suspects for who could be the red coat? There's Cece, Detective Wilden, Ren, the therapist, Melissa. And now that we know that Wilden might have been killed by Hannah's mom, it's looking likely that Wilden is not the red coat person. Cece seems way too obvious of a pick. I mean, the show was just really throwing her down our throat. So it's probably not her. And then there's Melissa. We have been down this road with Melissa a million times. We have probably locked in Melissa just as many times as we've locked in Spencer or Jenna or Lucas, the yearbook guy. Melissa is always super suspicious. But I don't even know what to even try to say that she did at this point. Then there's the therapist, which I do think is a solid theory, but I don't have enough information to really back it up, which just leaves Ren. I really do think that the Ren theory is a good theory. I like the idea that maybe he is Mona's older brother or something. Or there's the theory that Spencer is actually the red coat. I still think that's up for grabs, especially now that we have seen Spencer really struggle with her mental health in these past few episodes. Now, if you're a diehard fan of these videos, then you're probably saying, Chase, what about Ezra? Could it be Ezra? It doesn't look likely. He has found out about his son, and now he's super involved in his son's life. He's gone for most of these episodes because he's visiting his son and his baby mama. Which, by the way, not to play therapist, but I wonder if the reason that he fell in love with Arya, who was a high school student, is because he's kind of in this, he's stuck in the same place he was when he was in high school, and the love of his life got pregnant, but then his mom made her go away. So I wonder if he's been chasing that same love ever since that happened. I think it's called like Arrested Development or something like that. I'm not excusing what he's done. I'm just saying maybe that's why. I don't know. Anything else going on in these episodes? Caleb. Hannah and Caleb are back together. They go and they meet Caleb's uncle, who Hannah is pretty sure is Caleb's real dad. And I say pretty sure because we find out for sure that his uncle is his real dad. So Caleb meets his real dad. And Hannah actually gets Caleb's dad a job working at the church for Pastor Ted, doing construction on the bell tower. It also seems like maybe Caleb's dad has already stolen money from the church, so I'm sure that's going to be an issue going forward. I'm going to be honest, I don't know how any of this relates to the mystery. I think I'm just stalling because I'm trying to figure out who I want to lock in. Yeah, dude, I think I'm going to have to lock in Ren. We know a lot of sketchy stuff about him. He's the doctor at Mona's hospital all of a sudden. We know that he has had relationships with Spencer and Hannah. So maybe he also had a relationship with Allison at one point. Potentially, he could even actually be the father of her baby. We think it's Detective Wilden, but that could just be a misdirect. He's talked about his dad being in a psych hospital for most of his life. So I feel like we're getting a lot of little coincidences. Yeah, this feels solid. It feels like my best bet at this moment. So I am going to be locking in Ren as A, the red coat A, from episodes 17 through 20. And I think that there is only 4 episodes left in the season, which means that we should be getting the big reveal very soon. And if we don't, then I guess that just means that we'll be doing Can I Solve Pretty Little Liars Part 4. So let's see.
It's the show that won 5 Teen Choice Awards.
All right, roger that.
Roger that.
Now, trapped by A.
What do you want?
With no way out.
Well, guys, this is it. I just watched episodes 21, 22, and 23. The next episode that we watch will be the Pretty Little Liars Season 3 finale. And that is hopefully when we will get the big reveal of who the Red Coat A is. And since we are so close to the finale, we have lots of new clues and suspects and theories for us to play with, a lot of which comes from Spencer and the situation that she is in this batch of episodes. Spencer tells Arya and the girls that Toby is A, or, a part of the A team. And Emily is in denial. She says something like, Mona has to have something over him. He wouldn't just do this to us. And that might be true, but I don't know. She's never seen him in his do-rag. A sends Spencer a funeral wreath with the note that someone close to her is going to die. Basically saying, because you decided to snitch about Toby being A, one of you are now going to die. Spencer is super worried that Emily is the one who is going to get killed because Mona keeps kind of like teasing that it's going to be Emily, but this is all a trick because Spencer follows Mona into the woods one night and stumbles upon a dead body laying on the ground with the 901 Free at Last tattoo that we know Toby has. She sees Toby's dead body. Well, we don't know if it's for sure him because the body is wearing a motorcycle helmet, but has the tattoo. Spencer is distraught and ends up getting lost in the woods and just roaming in the woods, lost all night long. When she is found the next morning, she is a mess and she has to go in for like a mental checkup. And so she is currently at the same psych hospital that Mona was in. And we get a moment while Spencer is in the psych hospital where she's looking at a Joker playing card. So I think we all know what that means. It means Spencer's the Joker. And this psych hospital where her and Mona have been, it's actually Arkham Asylum, which makes this whole show a Gotham origin story. My guess is that Malcolm, Ezra's son, ends up becoming Batman, which means that hopefully Ezra gets gunned down in an alleyway. I mean, hopefully not. That would be terrible. While in the psych ward that may or may not be Arkham Asylum, Spencer meets the therapist. She works there sometimes, I guess. I say meets the therapist. I mean, she's obviously known her for like over a year. Her name, the therapist's name is Dr. Sullivan. I know I don't say that often. It's just I never think she's important, and then she keeps coming back. But anyway, I'm pretty sus of the therapist. We'll talk about that more later. Spencer, while she's in the hospital, meets one of the nurses, and his name is E. Lamb, which, if you don't remember, if you've never seen the show, E. Lamb is the name that Toby was using on his fake ID when he was trying to sneak in and out of the hospital. And E. Lamb, he seems like a really great guy. He gives Spencer a lot of information. He tells her that there was a security breach that was going on where someone that worked on the staff was sneaking people in and out of the hospital. And it also seems that E. Lamb absolutely despises Ren. And when Spencer asks him why he doesn't like Ren, he says, I've never trusted him. Ever since he got here, it just feels like he's not here for the right reasons. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, dude, we might be on to something. My theory might be right. Spencer finds out that the room that she is staying in the hospital is the exact same room that Mona was staying in at the hospital. And she actually finds a carving in the desk in the room from Mona. The carving says, "Can the circle be unbroken?" This causes Spencer to have a flashback to before Allison died. Her and Allison were at church. The church was singing the song, "Can the Circle Be Unbroken?" And Mona was actually there, and Allison was like making fun of her. That is where Allison tells Spencer all about her diaries, multiple. And she says, I'm writing them for you. You're going to need them if you're going to carry on after I'm gone. And Spencer's like, carry on what after you're gone? But Allison never answers. And then very shortly after that, we get a scene between Spencer and Mona, where Mona is showing that she has all of Allison's old diaries, which makes it strongly possible that Mona, with the access of these diaries, is just carrying on whatever Allison was doing. So like, who is Mona taking orders from then? Another crazy coincidence is Spencer finds out that Toby's mom, who is dead, was also a patient at the same psych hospital. Now, I don't know what that means, but it means something. Also, while Mona is visiting Spencer in the hospital, she tells Spencer that everything that has happened in this whole season 3, I mean, she doesn't call it that, obviously, but she says all of the things that have happened, all of the torture, all of the punishment, all of the harassment is a punishment for Spencer for turning down her offer to join the A-Team. Now, this offer, we later find out, Spencer accepts. Now, I hope that it's just like Spencer doesn't actually turn out to be turning to the evil side and it's just all a trick or whatever. But, you know, it's a strong possibility that she does join the A-Team, which would be a huge loss because Spencer's one of the best characters in the show, extremely dynamic of a character. Mona also tells Spencer that Allison was not, in fact, pregnant when she died. She thought she was. It was a false alarm. And then Spencer is given a board game to play with that was Mona's favorite when she was there. The board game has a map etched into it that Mona put there. Spencer follows that map in the middle of the night. It takes her to the abandoned children's ward. And she sees Allison. Now, Spencer hasn't slept in 3 days, but once again, we are seeing Allison. You know, like, for a dead girl, Allison shows up a lot. Speaking of Allison, at one point during these episodes, A kidnaps Ezra's son, Malcolm. Eventually, Arya does find Malcolm. A took Malcolm to like this carnival thing. And when she finally finds him, he's like, your friend Allison picked me up. So, now we can add kidnapping to A's long list of crimes. Anyway, back at the children's ward in the hospital, Ghost Allison helps Spencer discover Mona's stash. Spencer finds a bunch of Mona's stuff, including a guest pass that was made for Cece and approved by Ren. At this exact moment, Ren walks into the children's ward and catches Spencer. He explains to her that he was only helping Cece because he felt like it was what was best for Mona. Cece said that she could be a mentor for Mona. Now, I've been using that word mentor a lot to explain the red coat person when it comes to Mona and Toby and the rest of the A. So this is crazy, right? It looks like Cece is a lot stronger of a suspect than we thought. And it turns out Cece said that she would be such a good mentor for Mona because she too faced trauma from Allison. It turns out there was an incident at a frat party that Allison got Cece kicked out of college. And then the biggest bombshell of all is when Spencer asks Ren, how did Cece even know Mona was in here? To which Ren says, Melissa called her. Melissa is always tied up in everything, dude. Like at this point, when your dead husband is involved and your ex-boyfriend is kissing your sister and he seems to be involved, and your friend Cece, who you were at the beach with Allison when she potentially got pregnant from a cop, is involved. At what point are you the problem, Melissa? Speaking of losers, let's talk about Toby. So at first, no one is even sure if Toby is actually dead. But then by the end of episode 23, the police have found a body who matches the height and weight, and it has the 901 Free at Last tattoo. But they can't be 100% sure yet because the face is so messed up, it's hard to identify. So we have no clue if Toby is dead or not. Personally, I kind of hope he is, because not only did he trick Spencer into falling in love with him, but he tricked me into falling in love with him. He was so suspicious in season 1. And then by season 2, I'm like, well, this guy's awesome. And then to be fair, I did get a bit bored of him throughout season 3 until it was revealed that he was A. So, better him than a super sick character like Jason or Caleb. Speaking of that, though, it does bring up a good question of if Toby is actually dead, why did A kill him? Just to cover up some loose ends? Or was it to just really break Spencer mentally, which it did? I think both are probably true. It helps get rid of one more person that's connected to them, A-wise, and it helps play into Spencer being a shell of her former self. We also need to talk about a different major storyline from these episodes involving Detective Wilden and Hannah's mom who ran over him, which, by the way, I guess Detective Wilden isn't really a suspect anymore since we have found out that Allison was not pregnant. So, I don't know. You will be happy to know, maybe, he is alive. Hannah's mom did not kill him. And he is not, pursuing legal action against Hannah's mom or Hannah, but he is looking for his cop car, which he's probably not going to find because Hannah and Arya pushed it into a lake. They did that to hide the dash cam footage on the car. Very visibly saw Hannah's mom run him over. But also, doesn't really matter because A does have the dash cam footage anyway. So, that's classic A. Speaking of classic A framed Caleb's dad of stealing $8,000 from the church where he was doing construction at. So Pastor Ted has to fire him. It's a whole thing. We do get a lot of glimpses of Red Coat A throughout these episodes. So the hunt is still on for trying to figure out who that is. My top suspect is, of course, the therapist, Dr. Sullivan. The girls are even getting a little suspicious of her when one of them says, I always wondered how Toby found Dr. Sullivan and brought her back into town the exact night that Mona got revealed. And another one of the girls is like, well, do you think it was all planned? And to answer that question for them, yeah, I do. I think Mona getting caught was a part of the plan, a part of Redcoat's mastermind plan, so that way Mona could go into the psych hospital where she would be under constant surveillance, quotations, so that way Mona could be completely innocent of anything that happens after. And since we know it was Dr. Sullivan who helped get Mona into the psych ward instead of jail, it's very likely that maybe she could be the Redcoat A. The only issue is I don't know what her motive would be. What is the motive for this grown woman with a doctorate degree to be super involved in this teenage drama? My only theory is that she is a deranged therapist who loves getting into people's heads and manipulating them, turning it into an experiment or a game, brainwashing these kids like Toby and Mona and Jenna and Garrett. And that is the game that everybody is talking about. It's just a big psychological test that this deranged serial killer is performing on a bunch of college and high school students. It's like that Stanford prison experiment, except it takes place in a whole town. How funny would it be if I just did like a whole rant about an evil therapist, and then this video was sponsored by BetterHelp? Then, of course, we do have the Ren theory, which I still love. We had the idea of maybe he is like Mona's older brother, and then we found out that Ren's dad was in a psych ward for most of his life, and then we found out that Toby's mom was in the exact same psych hospital. So it's like, could maybe Toby, Ren, and Mona all be related? It just feels like a lot of coincidences to not mean something. Like, you know, maybe they're all siblings and their parents are met in the psych ward or something like that. Then, of course, there's Melissa, who is definitely being brought into the forefront of suspectory again. I just can't think of anything that would be interesting for it to be her. So if it ends up being her, that's on me for just being lazy and being like, lame. And then the show has completely forgotten about Maya at this point. Maya's dead. Everyone thinks it was her stalker, that Nate guy who did it. I'm pretty sure it was A, because she knew something that got her killed. We also haven't heard from Jenna in a while, but I think we know her whole deal. I think she's just been getting blackmailed into helping A with different tasks and stuff. There's Cece, who is a very likable candidate to be the Redcoat A, but I think that one's almost too obvious, so I almost don't even want to lock that in. It is very suspicious how we have not met this character at all until season 3, but then the show gave us a ton of flashbacks to be like, hey, this is a new character, but she's been here the whole time. I just think it would be kind of lame if the big reveal ended up being a character that we've only known for maybe 15 out of the last 60 plus episodes we've watched. And then we always have our Spencer theory, which again, always seems to kind of work. And then Toby's dead, maybe. I don't know. Regardless, we know that he can't be the Redcoat. Me trying to the way that I say Redcoat so maliciously makes me sound like I was in the American Revolutionary War. And then there's the parents, but I would be pretty shocked if it was any of the parents. They're usually just there for subplot stuff. It could just be Mona all over again. We had that theory a while back. We've never really accused Arya of being A. Stuff is usually just involving Ezra and this weird romance subplot that never has anything to do with everything else. Speaking of which, it looks like she broke up with Ezra, but we'll see. And then there is Jason. Maybe he took up his sister's sick, twisted game. I don't think so, but to be fair, I do really like Jason as a character a lot. And typically when you have a character you really like, probably ends up being some sort of twist about them. In a show like Pretty Little Liars, no one is good for long. But if the big reveal is happening in the next episode, this is my very last chance to lock in the correct guess for who is the Redcoat A. My gut is telling me Dr. Sullivan. My brain is telling me Ren. But my heart is telling me that I should lock in something absolutely insane. And that is the theory that Allison has been alive this entire time. I know. I also kind of want to lock in the idea that Spencer is the Redcoat A. It's a mess, dude. Could it be Paige? I don't know. Maybe it's the easy answer and it actually is Cece. I don't know, but I can't just stand here all day pointing at different characters. This video is probably already way too long. I'm just gonna go ahead and lock in that Dr. Sullivan is an evil therapist with a sick, twisted psychological experiment that is A. All right, that is what I'm locking in. When you guys see me again very shortly, we will have watched the final episode of the season, and we will know if we got the reveal or not.
It's the Pretty Little Liars spring finale event.
Spencer's part of the A-team. Game over.
Like a nightmare, Redcoat haunts them. Now, they're face to face.
She was here. I saw her too.
Okay. Let me collect my thoughts. We do not officially get the reveal of who the Redcoat A is, I think. But we kind of do. And I mean, we get some pretty big answers to some other questions, so buckle in, baby boys. So just to get you up to speed on everything, Spencer is only pretending to work with Mona and the A-team so that she can figure out who this Redcoat is. One of the answers that Spencer gets is that Toby is in fact still alive. And Toby was also just pretending to work for Mona and A to try to protect Spencer. And I'm thinking it's probably true because we get two sex scenes between Toby and Spencer in this episode. And I probably wouldn't bring that up, but I just thought it was very funny how there was like sex scene, then they cut away something else, and then it came back and they did a whole nother sex scene all over again. Why? I don't know. Good for them, but I have no idea. Find out that Spencer actually gained Mona and A's trust because Spencer is the one who kidnapped Ezra's son. We also see Melissa, Shauna, and Jenna having a secret meeting. Now, this is where I've made quite a large mistake. Some of you are probably saying, who the fuck is Shauna? Yeah, my bad. I never mentioned her. Shauna is Paige's ex-girlfriend who works at the costume shop. I did not think she was going to be even slightly important. But boy, was I wrong, and we'll get to that in a second. The craziest piece of information that we get, though, is that we find out that no one knows the true identity of Redcoat A. Not Toby, not Mona, not Spencer, no one. Toby even tells Spencer, the only thing that I know about Redcoat is that she is in charge. So, there's a big plan. The girls think that they're being smart by trapping themselves and Mona in this venue because there's going to be a big party. But oops, they didn't know that the plan was that A-Team was going to burn that place down with them inside of it. So now it looks like Mona, Hannah, Emily, and Aria are going to burn to death. And Mona is terrified. Mona tells the girls, you have no idea what she's capable of. It's her. She's everywhere and nowhere. And while the girls and Mona are being BBQ'd, Spencer and Toby are out in the woods trying to find the true identity of Redcoat, because Redcoat just landed a plane on a private runway and was showing up. Toby ends up getting knocked out, which means that there's other people involved in this A-Team situation, but Spencer does catch a glimpse of Redcoat. Next thing you know, the building that is on fire explodes. Is this the death of the main characters of Pretty Little Liars? No, because someone pulled them out of the fire. Somehow, some way, and Hannah wakes up just briefly enough to see the person that pulled her out of the fire was Allison. And then Mona is up and she's terrified and she's with the girls and she goes, it was Allison. Allison pulled us out of there. And she was like, she was here. I swear it. And then Hannah was like, I saw her too. And then Spencer goes, so did I. Allie is Redcoat. What? Because here's the thing, guys. I don't know how trustworthy this is. No one got like a clean look at Redcoat, right? And we have seen Allie quite often when the girls are like, poisoned with smoke inhalation from being in a fire or drugged or asleep. But then again, maybe it is Allie. And then we get more information from Mona. Mona is with the girls now. They're all in the car together leaving. And Mona tells them that Redcoat first showed up while Mona was in the psych hospital. And at first she was excited because she had like a partner in crime. But then she started to hate it because Redcoat was taking those girls away from her, which is interesting. And we will talk about that in a minute. But Mona also says that she was at the graveyard that night that, Emily was drugged and they stole Allison's body from her grave. And she caught a look at Redcoat, but Redcoat was wearing a mask that looked just like Allison's face. And so now the girls are like, well, maybe that's why we all thought we saw Allison. Maybe they're wearing an Allison mask. The girls and Mona pull back into their neighborhood where they see that Detective Wilden's car that Hannah and Arya pushed into the lake has been taken out of the lake by A and placed in front of their houses. And the dash cam footage is playing on repeat and it's showing Hannah's mom running him over. But then it keeps going and it shows us a part of the dash cam footage that we have never seen. And that is Melissa and Jenna are the ones that showed up and took Detective Wilden's body. Sorry, forgive me. It wasn't Melissa and Jenna. It was Jenna and Shauna. You know, the character that I hadn't mentioned at all, and now she's seen with Jenna pulling a cop's ran over body out of the woods. And then the girls all get a text message from A at the same time, including Mona, and the text message says, "You're mine now. Kisses, A." And then the trunk opens and all of the girls are looking in the trunk and they all gasp. Ah! Now we don't know what they see in the trunk because that's where it ends. If I had to guess, I would assume that there is a dead body in that trunk. And it seems like it's going to be very likely that A owns them now because they are going to blackmail them and be able to frame them for the death of whoever is in this trunk. If I had to take a wild guess of whose body is in the trunk of Detective Wilden's cop car, I would probably say Detective Wilden, but I don't know because that is where the episode ends. The season ends on a cliffhanger. But then we do get the end credit scene that is usually from A's point of view. And this time it is a repeat end credit scene, the same one that they used in the Halloween episode where we saw a hand come out of the dirt in the area where Allison's body was originally buried. You know, where it was hidden for almost a year before they finally found it. Except it kept going a little bit longer this time, and we see a second hand reach out and grab the hand that's coming out of the ground to help pull it out of the ground. Does this mean that Allison is actually still alive or that she was never even dead? In which case, if that is true, and if Allie has been alive this entire time, then that means that we might have gotten the big reveal in this episode, and it's that Allison is Redcoat. I think the most likely answer is that this is all some sort of trick and that Redcoat, we still don't know their identity. But I don't know. I kind of think that Allison being alive the entire time is even more possible now because the police confirmed that the dead body that they found belonged to Toby, which means that A knows how to trick the police by giving them a fake body. Which means that Allie's body that the autopsy was done on all that time ago could have been a fake dead body. And so if we lay out the timeline of everything that we know so far, we know that Allison disappears one night. A year later, Allison's body is found. The same day that Allison's body is found is when A shows up and starts harassing the girls. Based on what Mona tells us in the finale, Redcoat didn't show up until Mona was in the psych ward, which means that all of the A activities that happened in the first two seasons was all Mona. But I find that a little bit hard to believe. I think that there was a lot of things that happened in season 1 and 2 that we just thought was A, and it might have actually been the evil mastermind, and Mona just wasn't aware of it. So if Redcoat is actually Allison, why would she wait all of this time to actually start, doing stuff? Why would she show up and take over Mona's game and become the boss of the A team after 2 years? I just don't quite understand, which is kind of similar to every season finale that we've gotten so far in Pretty Little Liars. We get a lot of answers, but then we get even more questions. So before you start spamming the comments, yes, I will be continuing with Pretty Little Liars Part 4. I will cover season 4. I do have some other videos that will come out before that. It was 6 months between Part 2 and Part 3. It will not be that long again. It's just these videos take an insane amount of time to make. So it will be a little while, Don't expect Pretty Little Liars Part 4 this month or even next month. But if you want to make sure that you do not miss when I do Pretty Little Liars Part 4, make sure you hit subscribe and then click the notification bell so that way when Part 4 comes out, you'll get notified. And I really want to take a second and say thank you guys so much for watching. The Pretty Little Liars videos are my absolute favorite to make, and that's all thanks to you guys watching it. I've got merch, Patreon, and links down below. Okay, dope.